Flyers Trade Deadline special presented by our friends at Rite Aid, who want you to know getting vaccinated is easy. Just walk into your local Rite Aid or schedule online at riteaid.com. Unsure of what vaccines you might need? Just ask your pharmacist for a personal recommendation. Stop by your local Rite Aid today. And of course, our friends at Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. And we have it right off the top, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. We have Flyers trades to announce. I am, of course, Bill Match, your director of fun and games. That's Charlie O'Connor, Philly's number one hockey beat writer. Kelly Hinkle from Broad Street Hockey, and Mr. Flyperbole himself, Steve Jaco. We're all here today to celebrate the long-awaited move. Our national nightmare is over. Guys, they traded Kuzmenko. No, Scott Laughton, who I assumed would one day break Bobby Clark's games played record for the Philadelphia Flyers, has been traded. That's right, traded to the Toronto Maple Leafs. They get their first. It is, of course, a top 10 protected 2027 first-round pick. They're retaining on Laughton, and Nikita Grebenkin is coming back as well. Flyers sending Laughton and some future fourth this year and a sixth in 2027. Who cares about all that? Instant reaction. Lead it off, Charlie.
Yeah, it seems to me to be a good return for the Flyers. I would struggle to be critical of it. I think I'm kind of coming at it from a different perspective because I wasn't nearly as the Flyers need to trade Scott Laughton as it seemed like the entirety of the Flyers online fan base was. Mm-hmm. I think Scott Laughton is a valuable player to this rebuild because of what he brings off the ice. So I'm not like jumping for joy thinking this is like the greatest day ever, but it's a solid return. They get a first-round pick. My understanding with the first-round pick is that it's a top 10 protected pick. So it's going to be a first. It's just...
Would be very funny if the Leafs implode that hard.
I cannot imagine, but it's in 2027. So it is possible that, 3 years down the line, maybe the Leafs are a bad team. I guess that's possible, but they're going to get a first. My guess, usually with these conditional picks, if it's a top 10 pick in 2027, then it just gets pushed back to 2028. So they're going to get a first-round pick. My big concern when they announced the deal was, is it a conditional pick based on like how the Leafs do in the playoffs? Because we know the Toronto Maple Leafs, they have a tendency to choke in the playoffs. The fact that it's all about just protecting against the lottery, that makes me feel better. And the Russian, so you called him Grebenkin? I mean, they usually with Russian names, they put the accent on the second syllable. So I was thinking Grebenkin.
That makes way more sense.
But we will, in about a half an hour, have Alex Appleyard on to talk about Grebenkin, however you pronounce it. I would guess he probably knows, given the fact that he's paid very close attention to this guy for a while. He's a big fan of him as a prospect. So we're going to get some firsthand analysis from Alex Appleyard in about a half an hour. But I guess my general thought is I think it's a solid trade. I think that I would only have been critical of the Flyers trading Scott Laughton if I felt like they caved. If they just said, because to me, that would have not only been repudiating their approach to Scott Laughton over the last 2 years, but also seemingly caving to fans that I don't think they need to cave to. Yeah. My thought process was, if you set a high mark, like this is what you need to offer us in order to get Scott Laughton. If someone gives you that offer, trade him. If not, then don't. If they would have traded Scott Laughton straight up for a second-round pick, I would have been very critical of that because that would have felt to me like they were just caving to the fans that are angrily pleading with Danny to do stuff. This is not a do stuff move. This is a quality trade with a quality pick and a quality prospect coming back. The retention is not ideal. The extra picks aren't ideal, but the two primary assets are good enough that I can accept the retention and the extra picks because I think those two assets are legitimately valuable.
Oh, sorry, Charlie.
So for me, it's less about trading Scott Laughton, and it's about the thing that we've been talking about for a while. Is this front office able to make a hard decision on a guy they like? Mm-hmm. And clearly they can. Obviously, the entire team in the room would want to keep Scott Laughton.
Well, you could tell last night.
I'm sure that
by the way they played.
I'm sure that Danny Briere and Keith Jones really like having him in the organization. I'm sure John Tortorella really likes him in the room and as a guy. So like this wasn't trading Morgan Frost, who everyone was like, all right, enough already with this guy. This is a guy that everybody on the team likes, everybody in the fan base likes, brought a lot to the team, and the Flyers were able to make the difficult decision to move on from him in hopes of improving the team. And I think they did that. And that, I think, is a good sign moving forward. Reaction, Steve?
I mean, it's Gritty's best friend, right? You don't trade him lightly.
Yeah, right?
He's taking Sears photo shoots with the guy. I mean, come on. No, everything what Charlie was saying, right? Everything Charlie was saying about this trade as far as like, you don't need to trade Scott Laughton. He is the heart and soul of this team. He's a leader in the locker room. They clearly value him, and he's great for the next generation. So you have to make the return worth it. And I think this return's worth it. I think it is a good trade. I'm happy with it.
I very much agree. Once I started seeing it, it's a seller's market. You're like, all right, I'll believe that when I see it. And the prices start coming in. That's when I kind of shifted from, they can trade Scott Laughton, but there's no real urgency here to, this is the time to cash in. You need to do it now because it's never going to be a higher price. And I would have liked a 2026 first over a 2027 because I like stuff now. The Leafs don't have a first this year. And honestly, they already have 3. How many picks can you make? And that speaks to also the picks they're sending back to Toronto. Like, how many people can be at development camp? It's not a lecture hall. It's a sheet of ice. Like, you can't have 150 guys out there. And with the number of young players that they're going to be bringing in over the next few years, I have no problem shipping those out. The retention aspect, like Charlie said, not ideal. But you look at the Flyers cap situation, and this doesn't change it. It's $1.5 million for this year, 19 games left. And next year, you can live with that. You still have Cam Atkinson's buyout on the books. It goes down like $600K, but it goes down. Kevin Hayes still has one more year on his deal. Tony D expires this year. So like
Peterson
it's kind
expires this year.
Yeah, so it's still kind of the same. Oh, yes, in 2026, that's when the cap really opens up, and that remains the same.
Yes, that's the key in my mind. I get the trepidation about the retention. I get it, because retention is not ideal. You're cutting down on your cap flexibility. You retain 50%. That's a lot, even if 1.5 mil from a numbers standpoint isn't that large. But it does line up very well with everything they've told the fans about the timeline for when they're going to make the full-fledged pivot. Now, this summer, maybe they make a big trade. Maybe they go out and they use their stockpile of draft picks for 2025 and maybe a young piece, maybe a prospect to go out and try to get that center. But they're not going to be fully tapping into their cap space, and they've been very open about this, until 2026. Laughton's retention ends in 2026. I think it's noteworthy that they've been more opposed to retaining on Risto, whose retention would last through 2027, versus Laughton. I think that is very much showing their cards a little bit, in that 2026 is the year we're going to go out and be big spenders and go out and hit free agency. Not saying they're not going to do anything this summer. I think the trade market is going to be a big part of what they're going to explore this summer, this offseason. But in terms of when they plan to pivot to the free agency market, I think that was always 2026, and this retention doesn't negatively impact that, because the retention will be gone before that offseason.
That 2027 pick, first thing I said to Vince when all the details came in, we were talking before we go on air, they're never making that pick. That thing is getting traded. Like, that's the top 10 protected. Maybe it converts to 2028. In my mind right now, we'll never have to worry about what the hell becomes of that pick, because it's going in a trade somewhere. Nikita Grebenkin. Don't know a ton about him. We have like his stats and everything from Elite Prospects. He's 22, soon to be 22, I think in May. 6'2", 209, which I think is kind of interesting.
Size on the wing, definitely important.
We've been talking about how this is a small team, and we know they don't want to be a small team. Yeah. There's a guy, 5th rounder in 2022. Decent rookie year in the AHL. He's got 21 points in 39 games. He did get into 7 games with the Leafs this year, no points. Some decent KHL numbers before coming over. 41 in 67 games last year as a 20-year-old in Russia's top league. Funny, Mish had 41 as well last year. Of course, younger and in 48 games, not 67. But I like this trade a lot. I'm really looking forward to seeing what this kid can become. We'll talk to Alex Appleyard about that in a minute. But I just think this is a victory for, 1, all of our sanity, and 2, just like, You did it. I said the same thing about the Frost and Farabee trades, back on January 30th. Like Kelly said, you made a hard choice about a guy you like, about guys you thought were going to be a part of this, about guys that you think have intangible qualities, but you look at the team on the ice and go, it has to get better. How? This is how. That is exciting to me, that I think we are actually on the right track.
And maybe I am part of what is coloring this for me is how insufferable Twitter is. But like that, it really could be, because it's real bad. And I think part of my annoyance is that I don't think the Flyers needed to make this trade to prove anything to anyone. I don't think that, I think if you, and I've said this multiple times to people when I've gotten frustrated on Twitter, that if you didn't believe the Flyers weren't rebuilding and weren't serious about this, that's not a Flyers problem, that's a you problem, because they've made it very clear with their words and their actions that they're actually rebuilding. I didn't think they needed to trade Scott Laughton to convince anyone, but I guess people needed convincing. So sure, if that finally finalizes it for you, then maybe I can stop having these ridiculous conversations online.
While, yes.
Have you thought about Matt Bunch of numbers? Okay. Matt Bunch of numbers really wants this deal.
If the reason to do it is to satisfy a portion of very loud fans, that's stupid. But that's not the reason. No. The reason is it was the right thing to do.
The return makes it so I'm totally cool with it, and I think it's a good trade. I will say.
And that's a trade for the sake of a trade is just stupid.
If they would have traded, as I said, if they would have traded Scott Laughton for a second-round pick, I would have raked them over the coals. This is perfectly fine because I think the return is good.
Anthony Beauvillier went for a second. That was never what was going to happen. Like, the way this market unfolded, like, look what Tampa gave up for Gourde and Bjorkstrand. Like, that's why I think they had to do it. Not because it's like, you know what, I'm just tired of seeing Scott Laughton. And I like him, but I'm tired of talking about him. Like, we're talking about a bottom six forward who takes up, like, I don't know, half of our show for the last 6 months, for the last 2 years.
Well, between him and Morgan Frost, right?
Yeah.
Because Frost we've been talking
honestly,
about.
What the hell's the show going to be
What
about?
are we going to talk about now?
We've lost everything.
It's over, guys. Sorry.
Hackstall, Fletcher, they're gone. All of our whipping boys that they need to trade are gone. Well, there's still Risto, I guess.
There's still Risto. I mean, but Couturier's contract's still there.
I just think that this had to happen because of the circumstances in the league right now when it's. And listen, this isn't the best possible. This isn't like what I was hoping for. Like talking before the show, it's like, what if it's a 2026 first in Easton Cowan? I'm like, well, it probably isn't, but that would be dope. Like, it's not that, but it's something that moves you forward.
Yes,
well, it's another step in the direction of we are actually turning it over, and not that they had to prove it, but it's nice to see that. What I think is the right thing and what they think is the right thing aligned today.
I think you only get this deal at the trade deadline. Like, you don't get this.
That's why.
Yeah, because people are going nuts saying, oh, what do we need to put us over the hump? And the Maple Leafs are sitting there going, well, we're always out in the first or second round. Grit and leadership.
They got their heart and soul, baby.
Their heart and soul. And look, he is a solid player, but Scott Laughton's ultimately like a third, fourth line player. Yeah. Like, he's playing higher than he should in the Flyers line.
First is crazy.
Well, the Flyers aren't deep.
This doesn't matter. Like, again, 19 games left, and honestly, if they lose them all, good.
Great.
I mean, but if it devastates them as much as they looked devastated last night, they might lose a lot of games.
Like, who the hell plays? Like, you already had Scott Laughton, who were like, yeah, he's a nice bottom six forward. He is centering a line, was centering a line that featured your best player, Travis Konechny. Yeah. Who the hell are the centers for this team? Like, we're hearing they got calls about Paling. I don't know how interested they are in that. We have 45 minutes till the deadline.
I'd be surprised if they tried.
It would be surprising.
I guess it's possible, but
maybe
he's cheap and a good fourth liner. Like, I could see a team wanting to trade for him. But
I just don't know why the Fly, unless you like somebody's throwing a first round pick for Ryan Paling, which take that and run.
Hat trick in his first career game.
No, we were talking before the show. Like, my guess is that they probably recall Rodrigo Robles. That would make the most sense, right? Because he at least showed that he can hang at the NHL level. He can play center, and they can use him as a 4C and just bump Paling up to 3C for the rest of the year. One thing this does also tell me, though, is that they're going to go out this summer and trade for a center. Like, they
have to.
Well, I mean, I guess you don't have to
because
you say, well, Jet Luchenko makes the team. But they really
That's not
need
enough,
to
though.
trade for a center.
They need another
So
guy,
it's, let's say no more moves. It's line up as is. Coots, Paling,
Cates. Yeah.
and Luchenko.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to go. And like, no guarantee Luchenko makes this
No.
team.
Exactly.
He's not going to be 19, or he's going to, turn 19 right before camp? Like, really good chance he doesn't make it.
Mhm.
I think it's like not a foregone conclusion he's here. And in that case, yeah, I guess you could go with Massimo Rizzo or Rodrigo Abels or Elliot Desnoyers, but like,
these are exciting.
that's-
You're getting me too excited with these names, Bill.
I can't imagine that that's what they want to do. That would be surprising.
It's just that based on my conversations with Brent Flair and, talking with Maddie Campbell, who obviously covers the team very closely,
I know her.
it doesn't seem, Kelly, you know her.
I know her.
It doesn't seem like any of the name guys up front are close to being ready. I mean, Brent Flair straight up said in our interview, Tuamal ain't ready. Like, he thinks he's ready, but he's not ready. Desnoyers, last 2 years, regressed dramatically. Like, the guys who people want to see that are up, that they're play forward in the AHL, the prospects, it just doesn't seem like they're ready. Abels isn't really a prospect, but he's at least shown he's NHL caliber. The
He can hang.
defense is the position where they actually have guys who I think are ready.
Yeah.
I mean, Andrei is obviously ready. Hunter McDonald isn't that far away. Helge Grans, I think, can at least hang at the NHL level. They have defensemen that could come up immediately. Forwards, though, I just don't think they have anybody truly banging down the door at the AHL level. Probably their closest forward to being NHL ready is Jet Luchenko. And he can't play in the NHL.
Yeah, like,
At least not yet.
yeah. I do want to get to, because we're going to have Alex Appleyard in like 10, 11 minutes, just the Kuzmenko trade.
Kuzmenko, he got traded too. That happened.
Kuzmenko and a 2025 7th to LA for a third in 2027. They're retaining on Kuzmenko as well, which you thought was probably going to be the case if they were
It's
going to be
for
able to trade him.
19 games.
And that's another move where I'm like, that was the right thing to do. Like, I'm enjoying Kuzmenko. If they had re-signed him, I wouldn't have been like mad about it. But I just wish he was like 3 years younger.
Right.
Like, that is the exact type of distressed asset that it's like, oh, perfect. Like, a second, third chance guy. You give him a shot at 26, but no, like, he's 29. It doesn't make sense. Now you get something for him, and it's a little bit more of the return for Frost and Farabee.
I just was looking forward to 19 more games of Andrei Kuzmenko.
He was fun.
He's
Yeah.
fun and he's goofy, and I like
the
him.
inconsistency is what gets me, Kelly. At the
Listen,
end of the day. He's just a roller coaster of a player.
Yeah.
So I think if you can get an asset for him,
it was.
yeah.
Listen,
I agree. He was fun.
it was a good move, and they were right to do it. Personally, I was having fun watching Andrei Kuzmenko, so it's
I'm fine with it.
it's fine. Yeah.
I said on the show in the lead up to the deadline that to me it was, if you can get an offer for Kuzmenko higher than a 5th round pick, you do it.
Yeah.
Because to me, a 5th round pick was the, like, why bother? Because you could pick up a 5th round pick just by being the third party in a retention trade. So you might as well just keep the guy for the rest of the year, whatever. They got a third. A third seems perfectly reasonable for a guy who has been cap dumped twice in the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, just retention. That reminds me, that's all the retention slots.
Yeah,
So
they
they're
can't
not going to
retain
do like the
anymore.
Noah Hannafin thing last year,
Right.
Or be a broker in a
Right.
deal. They can't do that.
Yeah, they have Hayes, Kuzmenko, and Laughton.
They get a retention slot back on July 1st. You pointed this out on Twitter. Obviously, Kuzmenko's deal expires,
Right.
no longer retaining. So it's only for the end of this season.
But
that
it
they're
does
stocked.
it hamstrings them a little bit of the draft.
Yeah.
Because trades happen in the draft, they won't be able to retain. But
On
like,
Risto is the one that I'm really.
but
thinking
let's
of,
say
yeah.
with Risto, let's say that a team is interested. You would assume they'd be interested enough to wait until July 1st
you would
to
think.
do a deal.
Yeah.
If he's a guy that a team has targeted, he's a unique guy. Like, yeah, you could say, well, you might go for another defenseman. If you are interested in Ristolainen, you're interested in Ristolainen because you feel like his particular skill set fills a need.
Yeah.
Because there ain't that many guys like Risto, for better or worse, out there. So I would have to think that if a team goes through its, pro scouting meetings throughout the early part of the offseason and zeroes in on Ristolainen being their top target, they'll be willing to wait until July 1st to do a deal if salary retention is required to push it over the finish line.
This definitely means they're not trading Risto, and I want to talk
Not
about him a
today.
little later. Yeah, like today, they're not trading Risto.
I think it's unlikely.
It's-
It always seemed unlikely.
They basically told us it. Like,
they kind of did tell us.
Like when John Tortorella, within the span of 45 seconds, the same like press conference is like, well, we trade Risto on Friday. We're gonna miss him on Saturday. You can't get rid of a guy like that.
I need him.
And then in the same sentence, basically about Scott Laughton, everyone loves Scotty, but you can't fall in love with guys. It was. I mean, when the coach is outwardly saying this, this is always the way it was gonna go.
That's the one thing with John Tortorella. Say what you will about him. Like I would put it this way. I would love to play poker with that guy because he is incapable of hiding any of his emotions ever.
And you're probably a card counter over there.
That's blackjack.
I don't know how any of this works. It's all odds and stuff, isn't it?
I mean, fair.
I don't know.
Probabilities and such.
But point being is that it was Tort's comments that day were so glaringly obvious that you thought, like, is it an intentional smokescreen? Because it's so obvious that he wants Risto to stay and is like, yeah, but we should trade Laughton. And in retrospect, no, he was just being that obvious because that's what he wanted to happen.
Can you have some chill for 5 minutes, my guy? 5 minutes.
He's incapable of chill.
Completely incapable.
Has never drank a Coors Light in his life.
Can we go back to something Charlie said a few minutes ago that I think is important? So this is kind of like an interesting kind of like test for this whole culture situation that they've been so obsessed with. Because if the team does completely fall apart because they lost Scott Laughton, like obviously you're going to be bummed out that your friend is gone. Totally get that. But if the culture that they've been building is strong enough, they should be able to like proceed with their lives and still enjoy coming to work and play hockey. Like if they completely fall apart, it does kind of call into question like, okay, well, how good of a job have you done building a culture? If it was like one guy, you pull that linchpin out and the whole thing falls down.
Yeah, well, that's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it is if that happens, does that just speak to how strong of a culture builder Scott Laughton was? That maybe the people who said that he wasn't that important were underrating his impact.
If you've built the culture, like, you build a building, like you don't want it to like fall down because you have to take a window out and replace it. You know what I mean? Like,
true.
How well did you do building it? If it hinges on one guy being on the team forever, then in my opinion, you didn't do a very good job building it.
I guess where I'm coming from is like, what if Laughton was the keystone and pulling the keystone out does make the building fall down because he was that important?
I think there's a really good chance this is a step back before you take a step forward sort of situation with the like leadership of this team or whatever. But like we saw when they moved on from Giroux and guys like that, it was an opportunity. And you saw Scott Laughton really step up, Joel Farabee really step up, Travis Konechny became a leader. You see that happen, and then you look and go, okay, well now this is an opportunity for Forster and Cates and guys like that to really kind of turn it into their room and continue what he did. Yeah, I bet you they're real bad. Like, there's a chance they lose like 15 in the last 19.
Oh, they could be sad about it for a couple of
weeks. The goaltending is falling apart again.
Yeah.
Two, they're like, losing NHL players. They've traded 3 top 9 guys.
We were already talking about how weak their
half.
center depth was, and now it's even weaker.
You've lost 3 top 9 guys in a month and a half, and your goaltending's falling apart. Chances are it's going to be bad. Losing is never good for culture, but that creates an opportunity into the offseason and next season, training camp. Let's see who gets the boys together for the skate before camp start, all that stuff.
Who goes puck shooting with Bobby Brink.
Yes, exactly.
I have 2 things real quick. Okay. Number one, I want to play Jenga with Charlie and Kelly because that sounds amazing now after hearing all that.
I'm real bad at Jenga.
Yeah, I'm
a clumsy.
Let's learn some lessons. Number 2, I always think back when you're talking about that leadership in the clubhouse thing. Jason Stark wrote a book about the 2008 Phillies where he talked about Bobby Abreu, who was a great player for the Phillies for many years, but didn't win anything with him. And when they got rid of Abreu, that gave the opportunity to Jimmy Rollins and Chase Utley and Ryan Howard to make the locker room theirs. So that's the kind of stuff I think about in this situation.
Yeah, and we'll see. And there are a lot of people, and I don't necessarily even think they're wrong, a lot of people who would say that it is the best thing in the world for the Flyers to lose a bunch of games at the end of the season to maximize their draft pick and get a guy with potential to be a 1 seed down the road. My bigger concern with trading Laughton was always less about, like, if they fall off a cliff at the end of the season, I don't think that tells me with 100% certainty that Laughton was this perfect culture guy who you pulled him out and the whole thing collapsed. I don't think that necessarily even proves it, because it very well could just be, well, they traded away 2 NHL caliber players.
No,
They're
like
real weak
next
down
year,
the middle.
I think is,
To me, my big concern has always been that the Flyers have built over the last 2, 3, even 4 years, but really since Torts got here, a culture where they have been able to consistently pull off reclamation projects. They have been able to consistently grab guys like Owen Tippett, like Ristolainen, like Nick Seeler, guys who in other places, in other locker rooms, in other teams, have not lived up to what we now see as their potential.
Yeah.
And since Torts has gotten here, and I think that like lines up pretty well with like when Laughton really stepped up into a leadership role. It was after Giroux was gone, and Laughton took the lead as being like kind of the guy. This has become a room that has done a really good job of making people feel comfortable and making people feel welcome, and I think that helps player development at the NHL level. My big concern getting rid of Laughton is that I do think it could, not definitely, but it could make it harder for the room to help guys achieve their ceilings and help guys reach their best case scenarios. That's a concern because I do think Laughton had that impact on a lot of guys, not even because like he was necessarily, standing up in the middle of a room and giving speeches, but I just think that his presence fostered a culture that made people feel good about coming to work and made people feel welcome, made people feel like they belonged. And I think happy and comfortable people are more likely to become good players. And I do worry a little bit that given how important it is that they have as many of these young guys as possible achieve their ceilings, I do worry that you pull Laughton out of that room. Maybe suddenly you're not, reclamation projecting a player per year like you've kind of been doing for the last 3 seasons under Tortorella.
My hope is that it rubbed off on somebody.
I hope so.
Like there's someone else in the room who will like take up that mantle and be the guy that's like, nah, we're all buddies.
Yeah.
Like, come on in, you're cool. Like maybe Owen Tippett will be that guy.
We heard like Jamie Drysdale, because he knows he just went through it a year ago. Like when the guys from the Flames got here, he reached out and like tried to do what Tippett and that whole crew did for him. Like, nah, man, you're not moving into your house. Like, we're off for the All-Star break. You're gonna come to Cancun with us.
Yeah.
You figure out your house later, bro.
Yeah.
Like that sort of thing. Like that's a great like Jamie Drysdale, who was trying to be one of these reclamation projects.
Exactly.
Like maybe it rubbed off on him. There's just different aspects. Like Owen Tippett, he's been around. He's gonna be he is a highly paid guy at this point. He's turning into like one of the veterans of this team at this, as they move on from some of the older players. 26, 27, he's like kind of not an elder statesman, but one of the few guys actually in his prime right now.
He's a guy looked upon like pretty highly on this team because, I mean, he's easily one of the most talented forwards.
And I know that he isn't we've talked about him kind of being an introvert and maybe not, like you said, giving speeches, not the outward sort of leadership, but that little stuff, like bringing guys into the group, because he is maybe in other locker rooms. Like we heard about Dougie Hamilton. Like he just doesn't really fit in, like maybe him fitting in Owen Tippett, like that helps him foster other people coming along that way. But it is something to think about. I think, I just had this argument. Okay, if you think what Scott Laughton did is all, nonsense. Like, I don't want to hear about leadership and toughness and all these other things that are unquantifiable. That said, it's really hard to put a value on that sort of thing.
It is. That's the whole problem with it.
And so I can't think about this move as anything but a positive. Yes, there are some potential drawbacks, but like this had to be done, and if the locker room falls apart, it was never going to work anyway.
I think the guys that I'm going to be looking to step up, at least in the short term, are the guys who are already leaders. I want to see Sean Couturier is already a leader, but he is more of a lead by example guy. I want to see him maybe, take another step as a guy who, sort of brings that Laughton-esque, let's all come together sort of thing. Travis Sanheim, the last couple of years, has taken big leaps. He could be a guy who keeps that flame burning that Laughton created in that room. Travis Konechny as well. Konechny is a fiery guy. He's been more of a spark plug. You know, maybe he can develop into like a Marchand type, where Marchand eventually is wearing the C for Boston. So those are the guys that I want to see step up, because I do think it's important. I think this is a good enough return where this was the time where if you're going to get this return, I totally get it. But I do think there are risks involved with trading Laughton. I do.
Okay. Do we have, while we're waiting for Alex Appleyard, I'm going to do some more Laughton stuff after we talk to Alex. He'll be with us shortly. Steve, do we have other trades?
So some of the recent ones we got Casey Middlestat going to the Boston Bruins.
Middling
Charlie
stats.
Coyle.
Your boy, Charlie.
Casey Middling stats,
Yeah,
baby.
Middling stats. There you go.
He's the one that
So it's
couldn't do a pull-up,
Middlestat,
right?
Yes.
I wonder if he can do a pull-up.
I hope he can do a pull-up.
Do you think by now he can do a
questions,
pull-up?
Could not do a pull-up at the combine.
They're really hard.
So it's Middlestat, Zellers, and a 2025 second-round pick to Boston.
Oh, I liked
Charlie
Will Zellers
Coyle.
in last year's draft.
Charlie Coyle and a
Don't pick up.
2026 fifth-round pick to the Colorado Avalanche. Bill, one of your favorite players, Peter Mrazek,
Ooh.
going to the Detroit Red Wings, going back where
Going
he
home.
belongs. Yeah, going home with Craig Smith, Joe Veleno going to the Chicago Blackhawks, and Cody Glass going to the New Jersey Devils, a third-round pick going back to the Pittsburgh Penguins.
They got
So
a third-round
this-
pick for Cody Glass?
Yeah.
Wow.
Someone
Yeah.
mentioned something in the
That's
chat.
why it was the right thing to do.
This Wyatt Johnson extension is bumming me out because that was going to be our offer
Oh,
sheet
did they
guy.
get that done?
That's who
Because
It
you
looks
want it.
like they're got yeah.
Okay.
what was everyone's reaction to the Mikko Rantanen deal? Because
Dude, that's
freaking
wild.
When I was going to bed last night, it was like, yeah, this thing's done. They're just working out an extension. That's at like, I don't know, 4 a.m.
And then it like fell apart, and,
And
then it
then-
was back on again. It was like,
I woke up and was like, yeah, maybe not.
Mm.
And now it's done. Dallas really going for
They're
it.
going
and
for it.
I appreciate that. And they have him signed long term. So that will be interesting. But they got that Johnson extension done. That's
it's
a bummer.
just so interesting to me. Like, if I'm a Hurricanes fan, like I would want them to, even if I know he's going to walk at the end of the season, like I feel like Carolina is poised to make such a hard push for the Eastern Conference Championship this year because the East kind of sucks anyway, and they're really good. So like, I would have preferred that, like, all right, it's not going to work out with this dude, but we're going to really go for it this year. And like, because if they win the cup this year, no one's going to care that Mikko Rantanen walks for nothing. Like,
Yeah.
No one's going to care. It's just wild to me that they like got him obviously for the playoff push. And once they figured out that they weren't going to sign them, presumably because their owner's cheap, they were just like, nah, I guess we're just going to cut our losses. But I don't know. It just seems like now they're not as strong
It feels like a step back.
playoff wise. Yeah.
I mean, it might be a bit of a step
Long
back.
term, it's
It feels
probably
like
good.
an
Long term.
immediate step
St.
back,
Cohen's a
but
good
long
player.
term.
Yeah. Long term, it's good.
long term,
I know that he has, he hasn't quite lived up to the expectations of this season. He kind of has gone through a pretty extensive slump, but I do like him a lot. Now, I guess what for me, it's like, it's kind of like the way I'm looking at at Kuzmenko. Kuzmenko is now just a third-round pick. So I split up that Frost trade and I say they got a second-round pick for Morgan Frost, and for Joel Farabee they got a third-round pick and Jacob Pelletier,
Right.
basically. So now, from Carolina's perspective, the trade was basically what they got. Logan Stankoven, 2 first-round picks, and Taylor Hall
Yeah.
for Marty Necas. Like to me, that's that's a pretty good trade.
That's fair. Yeah. That's a fair point.
It's a pretty good trade. Is it an amazing trade? No, but it's a pretty good trade.
And
I picked them to win the cup. So I
While-
really, for my own personal ego, wanted them to really go for it.
while
Fair.
Tom Dundon does have,
Dun, dun.
while he does have the reputation of kind of being, a small market owner, let's call it that. The rumor was they offered Rantanen 8 years, 9 figures. 12 and a half a year would get you to 100. Elliot Friedman said, and it's not 12 and a half, meaning more. He just didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
Like, if at the end of the day, he doesn't want to be there, he hasn't exactly been very good for them, and he's an awesome player. They did the best they could. They went for it. I like Carolina a lot. Would have liked to see them keep him, make a push, but yeah, it is what it is for them. And yeah, now Dallas has him, and that's Charlie's team. And now we are joined. We are joined by PHLY Flyers foreign correspondent
He's a real
Alex
human.
Appleyard to tell us about part of the return for the Scott Laughton trade. Nikita, how do you say it?
Yeah,
Charlie?
first question, Alex. What is the correct way to pronounce his last name?
I mean, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we
Yes.
got you.
All right, perfect. Well, I would say Grebenkin is probably correct. but who knows?
Grebenkin. Okay.
Feel like it's almost individual dependent. You know, when I was speaking to Zabragin earlier this year, he changed the way he wanted his name to be pronounced over the last year once he'd heard Americans say it. So, yeah.
It is funny how they like a lot of the Russian players. It's like Provorov is like, just call me Provorov.
Yeah,
like
it's
it's not
supposed to be Provorov.
Provorov.
No,
like,
just call me
we're
Provorov,
not doing this. Just say it the way you say it.
Yeah.
So I just want to know, Alex, like Flyers bring in now a almost 22-year-old prospect. He comes over from the K. He was pretty productive there last year. Decent rookie season in AHL. Where does he fit in terms of like Flyers prospect ranks?
I think in terms of where he fits right now in Flyers prospect ranks, actually pretty highly. Obviously, you've got Lutsenko, you've got Bunkin, you've got Andrei and Zavragin, who I think are a bit of a tier ahead. But then I think he fits firmly with kind of Barkey and that kind of like bottom end of second tier of Flyers prospects, where you think that maybe if everything goes correctly with him, he can potentially blossom into kind of a 50-point second line winger. But his floor also, I think, is quite high as well. You know, he's already a solid AHLer, and he was a very good KHLer. And he doesn't have like a top 6 or bust skill set. So yeah, I would say somewhere in that 5 or 6 range alongside Barkey.
What would you say if you were to describe his skill set, his style of play? What kind of player is he?
I would say he's a physical playmaker is the way I'd probably best describe it. He has really good vision, plus hands and great passing. You know, he loves to kind of set up behind the net and also kind of make those east-west passes across the crease to create high danger chances. Last year, in the KHL, he was paired with Yurov quite a lot. Obviously, one of the high picks, first round pick for the Wild in 2022. And I would say he actually drove play more than Yurov on that line. You know, he was up at over 56% expected goals for, more than Yurov last year. And a lot of the time, he was just kind of playing off Yurov, creating space for him, and then getting really beautiful passes into high danger areas. But he's also, he's not super physical. He's 6'2", probably about 210 pounds, maybe even heavier now. But he's good on the boards. He's not scared to go to the net. So yeah, kind of a physical playmaker is the best way to describe him, I'd say.
Get one more. Yeah. It seems like just reading scouting reports, the concern with him is skating. What's your view of that?
I think it's a mixed bag, his skating. I think his top speed is actually okay. You can look at NHL Edge and see what he's done in the NHL this year. In a very small sample, his skating was just below average top speed, like 21.9, whereas the average is about 22 for a forward. In the KHL, he did have a few bursts a bit higher than that, above average from the NHL standard. But I think the area where his skating does probably need to improve to really get to where he could be is kind of some of his edge work is a bit sloppy. He has kind of like those rangy strides where he doesn't seem to generate power right away. Once he's through that little acceleration phase, he can keep up with most players, but he just needs to be a bit quicker on his edges. So I think that's where the skating concerns come from, and I can see them. But you can see that the power in his legs is actually there. So it's just a bit of like edge technique more than anything, I think. But he's done well at the KHL and doing solidly at the AHL level with it. So I don't think it's an enormous concern. He can play in the NHL right now with his level of skating. But to reach that upside of like a 50-point player, you would like to see him just become a bit more agile.
Could you see him as a good complement on Michkov's other side?
I think it could work. He's a bigger guy. He can pass the puck well, and he can play left wing. He's played both wings, really. I think some of his best work in the KHL was at left wing, and this year he's kind of flipped between wings in the AHL. So I do think he could work. He plays a slightly different game to Michkov, really. He likes going in the boards. He's a pass-first player, whereas Michkov, I think, really is kind of, funnily enough, a shoot-first player, even though he's a very good playmaker as well. And obviously someone bigger who can clear space out for Michkov could work well. I do think, though, that in a perfect world, you'd have a higher talent player on the other wing to Michkov at some point. But I think over the next couple of years, while Flyers build, Grebenkin wouldn't be a bad fill-in. But if things go well, I think where he really fits is kind of that second, third line left wing spot going forward.
So, Alex, if there's something we haven't asked, like if there's one thing Flyers fans should know about Grebenkin, I'm terrible at this. Yeah, Grebby. If there's something Flyers fans should know, like what do you think the takeaway is? Like this player is X?
I think one thing that you can look at is if you look at his scoring and production in the KHL at age 19 and age 20. He put up 0.5 points per game on loan at Amur in 22-23, and then 0.61 at age 20. And it doesn't seem an incredible amount of production, but the KHL is a low-scoring league. And, in 2022-23, the only KHL player under 20 who scored more was Michkov. And last year, the only KHL players under 21 who scored more were Yurov and Michkov. So, it's quite good company. And when you look through past years, over the last 20 years of the KHL, there are probably like 20 guys who've produced at roughly that level over the last 15, 20 years. And the only guys who didn't become proper NHLers was Prokhorkin and Golishev. And obviously, Prokhorkin was kind of okay in LA in a bottom six role. So I think there's a good history to work on there. And another thing I would say is if you look at what he's done in the AHL this year, I think he would have done more on a team like the Phantoms. And I think he might have a bump in scoring on the Phantoms because, on that Marlies team, he only played kind of 15-30 a game in the middle six and wasn't on power play one. 21 points in 39 games isn't bad production, but I think most would have expected him to do better coming from the KHL where, he put up fantastic scoring on the best team in the KHL last year. Metalurg ended up winning the Gagarin Cup. And I think once he comes to the Phantoms, he'll probably score a bit more.
All right. Anything else, anybody?
No, one thing, and this is just a long shot because I haven't had a chance to really dive into it. I saw some people commenting about it. I think Mackenzie brought it up. Is he friends already with Michkov? I think it was Mackenzie who said, or I saw a tweet that implied that he was.
I think they played a bit together on the Russian under 25 team in the last couple of years. So they will have been, around each other in training camps, etc. So I wouldn't put it out of the question for them to, have a rapport at least.
Gotcha.
All right.
See, Danny replaced his friend.
I was going to say, subtract one friend.
That's what matters.
Add a new friend.
Yeah.
All right, Alex,
maintain friends.
thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate your work as our, I call you our PHLY foreign correspondent. Obviously, you put together the prospect rankings with Charlie. Some terrific articles. You can read them at all, PHLY.com. Thanks for joining us today, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, have a great day, everyone. Thanks for having me on. Bye.
I got to thank Alex in my particular way today.
Oh, I love this siren. It is so freaking obnoxious.
I need it on every show.
I missed all the good Flyers moves. So
I know.
I have to use the siren as much as possible.
I really thought Danny was like doing us a favor and he was just going to wait till like 2:15 and he does it like an hour and a half before we go live just to make it a little more difficult for us.
Danny's sending super chats under a pseudonym every time, right?
I'm fairly
I
certain
JH
it's him.
is Danny Briere.
Yeah.
JH and Gary B are the same person, we determined last night. No, they're not. They're both just individual regular super chatters who we appreciate very much.
We love you, super
All right,
chatters.
before we get back into the trade deadline conversation, I got to tell you about a couple of our sponsors,
Heyo.
starting with Shady Rays. It might still be cold here in Philly, but it's never too early to start thinking about the summer and the sun. And our friends at Shady Rays are helping you get in the right frame of mind with their premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. I tell you all the time, I love Shady Rays polarized glasses. You can tell I'm reading this off of a screen right now. Not messing with my eyes, despite these being polarized. And not only that, these are the tangle frees as well. Put them up on your head. Boom. Doesn't mess with your hair. So you go into Wawa, you don't come out looking like a maniac any more than you went looking in. I am a huge fan of Shady Rays. And right now, for PHLY viewers and listeners, go to shadyrays.com and save 30% off polarized shades with code PHLY. Over 300,000 people have rated Shady Rays 5 stars. So use code PHLY today at shadyrays.com. And while we're here, let me tell you about Ace Hardware. That's right, because if you have a leaky pipe, at Ace Hardware Home Services, they're around the block with everything you need to fix it, including the person to do the fixing. Same goes for air conditioning issues and that faucet you said you'd get to like 18 months ago. Give up. Hire someone. It'll make everyone in your house a whole lot happier. And use our friends at Ace Hardware Home Services, because from plumbing to heating and cooling, they've got the trusted pros to keep your home humming all year long. Ace Hardware Home Services, they're bringing helpful home, the helpful you love from the store, now to your front door. Visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next project today. All right. I want to just get back to the Scott Laughton part of this conversation because I do find it interesting. Other than the 7th round pick they shipped out with Kuzmenko, which I find the second most interesting thing they've done today. I love when 7ths get traded. It makes me so happy. But Scott Laughton,
You got to find joy somewhere.
Got to find joy in some way.
because I was listening to this. We got 2 hours. You know, I can sidestep.
of course.
Talk slower. So I'm listening. So Jeff Marek every Friday on his new show, The Sheet, very good, has Brian Burke on. And Brian Burke was talking about like the draft, and it was when the Flyers got that 7th, like as part of that deal back for Farabee and Frost.
Right.
He's like, I think it's like a 2028 7th. And Marek's just like, how does that stuff happen?
Yeah, seriously.
And Burke is like, honestly, it's just something else. Like, oh, and a 4th thing, you know, like you got even more back. It's something to throw in. And he said he loved trading his 7ths because 1, he used to leave early. He would be like, all right, we're done. I'm leaving. And then when the league would tell him you can't leave, he would trade them just because all of his scouts would, like, it's your last pick. All of his scouts are fighting over it, like getting in fist fights over like their little passion project. And he goes, boys, what are we doing? Like, this guy is never going to play in the AHL. Well, what are we fighting over? I'm trading this pick and we're leaving. Like, so I find that funny. But for Scott,
I got to get to the bar.
gotta get the hell out of here, man.
That's a great story.
But Scott Laughton, like, I am happy for him. And Charlie, you pointed this out, like close to home.
Yes.
We're gonna have Rachel Doerrie on at 3:30 on her podcast Puck Social this week. They did like matchmaking, who's going where, and she said Laughton's going to the Leafs or Laughton's going nowhere, and turns out she was right. It's like an open secret that if he was ever going to leave Philly, like he wants to play at home. He wanted to play for the Leafs. He wanted to go there. That was what was going to make him happy, and so in that regard, you know, we had all the debates about doing right by him.
You got to do right by him, Bill. Did he have Maple Leaf pajamas?
I'm sure.
I think they did. They absolutely did. And another thing, I mentioned this on Twitter after the trade. It's been such a busy last month and a half that sadly I think we kind of forgot about it because there were just so many things being reported and there was 4 nations. But Scott Laughton's wife's father passed away in late January. It was very sudden. Obviously, his wife was extremely close to her father. Laughton was also very close to to his father-in-law, and that was obviously devastating for the Laughton family. The family is in the Toronto area, so I got into some debates on Twitter with people yesterday about the fact that I was like, look, I'm not saying you don't trade Laughton. I am saying though it's important when a guy is with the organization for 13 years, when a guy does all the things that Laughton has done for the organization, not to just be like, well, sorry, we're sending you to Winnipeg even though you don't want to go there.
Yeah.
Like, I do think it's important to at least keep him enough in the loop that he feels like he's not getting blindsided or getting sent somewhere that he really doesn't want to go. And I think whether it was just coincidental, whether Toronto had the best offer and also it's a great spot for him, or if the Flyers tried to direct the conversation to a place where he would be happy, I don't know. But what I can say is that I don't think there is any chance at all that Scott Laughton will come away from this feeling negative about the Flyers, even if he wanted to stay. And I do think that's important. I do think, especially when you're in the Flyers' perspective and you're trying to rebuild not just your culture, but also perception around the league, trying to get back to the point where players want to be a part of the Flyers organization because they get treated right. I don't think this is going to hurt them in that regard. If anything, it will help them, and that I don't think should be just brushed aside as no big deal.
And this is because we've had arguments throughout the last few months about like, be Vegas, be Florida, be cutthroat, do the stuff that they do. And I think when you are in winning mode, you can.
Yes, I agree with that.
Like Tampa Bay can let go Steven Stamkos, and it's like, franchise legend, #1 pick, your captain, blah, blah, blah. This is going to hurt you around the league. And it's like, well, Jake Gensel signed the next day. Yeah. You know, because it's Tampa. 1, you're going to Florida. That's always nice for players. 2, getting a big bag of money. 3, you're going to be winning. You know, them getting a wild card spot is the floor for them. You're going to be playing with all these Hall of Famers. The Flyers are not in that position. No. They have to build themselves up a little. As much as I'm like, yeah, man, if you wouldn't, trade Konechny for whatever because you got to be cutthroat, like, oh, you must not have designs on winning a cup. I do have to take a step back and remember, like, we're not there yet. Like, we're going to have to attract free agents to get there. We're going to have to get guys to waive no trades, whatever, to come here. We're going to have to get them to sign offer sheets to come here. Yeah. They have to think they're going to an organization that's not going to treat them like crap.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's important.
And I think it's extra important for the Flyers because it's less important for an organization that is new and didn't have the reputation in the past of treating their players really well. Because if you think about it, like, Vegas has things to sell. Obviously, they can sell winning. They can sell the fact that it's Vegas, young 20-somethings deciding to go to Vegas. Like, yeah, it's an easy sell. Florida's an easy sell for tax purposes and also because of the weather, and they win. With the Flyers, okay, what were the two things that they could sell players on before they went through the downturn? It was, number one, we have all the money. Well, they can't do that anymore because there's a cap here. They can do it a little bit. They can do it with signing bonuses. They can do it with facilities, but they can't just throw $3 million a year more at guys like they could in the 90s. They can't do that. It would be stupid to do that because there's a salary cap and every dollar you spend on one guy means a dollar you can't spend on improving the team elsewhere. But the other thing they had going for them was the concept of, you join the Flyers and we will take care of you. That was the Flyers brand. And I think they believe, rightfully so, that in the 2010s, they lost that they let, some of the alumni down. They fired some former players. They just didn't have the same feel. And I think the Flyers look at it as, you know what? We can't sell taxes. We can't sell weather. We can't sell winning. But if we can tap back into something that did actually have an impact in terms of convincing guys to come sign with us, that we have precedent for, that's going to be easier to build back up because, like, players still hear stories about how, look at the friggin' GM and president. Like, if you're part of the Flyers, you stay part of the Flyers, you're taken care of for life. And in a way, I think the Flyers are trying to bring that back. And one way to bring that back is to do right by your long-standing players, and Scott Laughton was one, and I think they did right by him.
As resident Delaware person, I feel the need to correct the chat. There is no sales tax in Delaware. There is income tax in Delaware. These guys don't care about sales tax.
Yeah.
They're worried about the income
Come play
tax.
for the team in Delaware, guys. What are we talking about?
Also, commuting from Philly to Delaware is annoying.
Kelly can vouch.
Yeah,
She's done it before.
If they want
many
to start
times.
their own corporation,
That's true. Start
Sure.
your corporations in Delaware.
go to Wilmington
but they
and
do
start your
have tax.
Go to
Like Sport
scenic
Enterprises,
Wilmington.
for instance. What's
Great water though.
kind of weird? It's like 5 of the deadline. Flyers have not tweeted about this trade yet. They did tweet about the Kuzmenko trade, and it's not on the NHL trade tracker. Weird?
No.
The fax machine gets jammed up sometimes at Central Registry, where approximately
it's on the
75-year-old men, I believe,
It's on
work.
TSN?
It's on the TSN trade.
I'm mildly surprised the team hasn't announced it yet, but when
Interns
Scott
on
Laughton
break.
was on TSN saying that I got traded, there's no way it's not going to
And
happen.
No, it's definitely
we got these
happening.
pictures from Jackie Spiegel's Twitter. She was down at the Flyers training center, like right when this was breaking.
Yeah, I took a picture too. I just
Taking
didn't
it
tweet
down
it.
I didn't see.
immediately.
Yeah, I just didn't tweet it, but I took a picture.
fast.
They're taking down
Yeah.
banners featuring Scott Laughton.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
quick.
it's happening. Like, I don't think we're gonna get like a curveball at 3:15. Be like, actually,
Well, actually,
Take them
but
down now.
this is
Hurry.
It is
the banners
like,
back up.
I know it's like a dumb little thing. It's just like they're taking this one down. There's one outside as well that features Laughton that they're removing. Yeah, there it is. There,
Oh my God.
It's gonna make everybody too sad.
It is
Lindros
like,
all over again.
It is, and like, listen, we say that in jest.
I know. Yeah,
Obviously,
we're joking.
Eric
yeah.
Lindros, Hall of Famer, but Scott Laughton does kind of like represent an era here. He was drafted 20th overall in 2012, 9 full seasons, part of 12 seasons with the Flyers, a victory for the organization's player development, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously,
100%.
it took him buying in, and a lot of guys don't want to hear that. Yeah, man, you're not going to be a point-a-game player here. You need to figure something else out if you want to play in the NHL, and he did. But you just look at his resume as a Philadelphia Flyer. 661 games. That's 14th most in franchise history. 106 goals, 265 points. His 6 shorthanded goals and 17 shorthanded points. 8th and 1st in the NHL since Torts took over. Torts really found a way to utilize him, even at this like latter stage when he thought like, all right, we know what Scott Laughton is. Like he became a weapon on the penalty kill. 23 career shorthanded points, 10th most in Flyers history. This dude had a hell of a career here. And I know like, yeah, 2012. And since then they haven't done a damn thing. And we'll always think like, oh yeah, these guys who lost. Like I'm not gonna like paint this picture of Scott Laughton as if he was the face of the franchise or anything. But you do need guys like him, and he served his role very well for a number of years.
Yeah, he was a great Flyer. And I think this sounds like...
Do the thing.
Oh, you want me to do the thing? Okay, I'll do the thing.
I have an interesting... 8 minutes ago, the Vegas Golden Knights tweeted, hi.
Just
Hi?
Just hi.
They sliding into the DMs.
What are they up to? The Golden Knights are doing something.
They're getting Crosby or something,
They're gonna
probably.
do something
I
ridiculous.
wouldn't put it past them. They're next
Actually,
level.
we've
Always
acquired the
got
Jets.
something crazy off.
Last year, didn't they come in right at the buzzer with the hurdle trade?
I think that was right
that
at
was
the
the big
end.
one.
that was right.
People are speculating it's going to be Marchand.
Ah,
I mean,
that would be very Vegas.
That would be
That would be
perfect.
so
Yes.
Vegas.
That would be extremely Vegas.
Oh my God.
What does that mean? But I was saying with Scott Laughton, this feels like the most significant trade for the locker room since Giroux got traded away. as far
I
as,
would
like,
agree with that.
locker
I would agree
room
with that.
presence.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, no, we know Farabee was kind of the like almost conduit between the young and old guys. Like he was kind of the social leader, Charlie has called him before. But I don't think he had the like status that Scott Laughton did. And obviously Claude Giroux, franchise legend, captain for a decade. Like, yeah, but I guess, yeah, like this would be the most significant trade in terms of altering the franchise as we know it. And that's what they got to do. That's what we're doing in this rebuild. And I can confidently say the word rebuild because it is.
Yeah,
it's been
they're
proven
so
now.
Very
It's been
clearly
proven.
doing it.
Oh boy.
you say
No,
it's
no,
not,
no.
you're-
Don't worry. In 2 weeks, it's not a rebuild if Tortorella's still the coach. It's not a rebuild if Ristolainen isn't traded this summer. I have zero faith that people are going to be convinced by this. They're just going to move the goalposts
I'm
further.
still waiting for someone to be mad about like the 7th round pick that they traded with Kuzmenko. Someone's going to do it and
Oh,
complain that why would you give up that much?
I've already seen people mad
Why'd
about
you have
like,
to add a 7th?
what they got for Kuzmenko. I'm like,
And
what did you
retain?
expect to get for Kuzmenko?
Yeah, like
I don't
it was an
understand.
we
There's always
acquired.
somebody
It
that
was
has a spicy hot take about a 6th
like,
or 7th round pick.
Kuzmenko was a basketball trade. It was a salary matching
Yes.
situation.
Yes.
Yes.
We got an expiring contract.
Yes. Yes.
Like that's all.
And then they
what
got
do you
something
Steve?
for it.
Now,
So,
on
go-
the topic of
go.
Flyer centers, because we were just talking about, Flyer centers, Braden Shen, notorious Flyer center, not going anywhere. Andy Strickland says he is staying in St. Louis.
Well,
That was one of the big names out there today.
It seems like that was something that really played to the Flyers' benefit because based on what I had heard, Shen was kind of Toronto's first choice. And once it became clear that the Blues were asking for too much, that they pivoted to Laughton. So if the Blues would have been more willing to accept a deal, then beautiful. Then Laughton may still be a Flyer. So maybe we should all be thanking Braden Shen, or at least the people who really wanted Scott Laughton to be traded should be thanking Braden
Braden,
Shen.
thank you for
Thank
your
you,
service.
Braden Shen.
Or be thanking the St. Louis Blues. Maybe
Just
that's
to
more
at
accurate.
least put a bow on Laughton for now. I'm sure we will talk about this trade for weeks to come because God knows these
What- I
games
was
are
gonna say,
probably going
what
to be
else are we
ugly
gonna
as hell.
talk
Just if you could define Laughton's tenure, career arc, like what was Scott Laughton as a Flyer in your mind? What did this era, like what did he represent?
I guess for me, honestly, like I feel similarly to just not obviously as much because Claude Giroux was a much better player,
Yeah.
borderline Hall of Famer, but I feel like Scott Laughton was a perfect Flyer just born in the wrong era. Because he would have been such a good bottom sixer on a cup contender. And it's not like Claude Giroux would have been amazing. And he would have been one of the most beloved Flyers. He's still one of the most beloved Flyers, but he would have been up there with Bob Clark if he would have had a better supporting cast.
Yeah.
Scott Laughton could have been the the fan favorite bottom sixer that everyone loved, that gets his name up in the rafters if he was on a team that was better at the top. And it's a bummer to me that like he had to be a bottom sixer on a miserable team mostly rather than a bottom sixer on a great team, because I think he still would have been a bottom sixer on a great team. Like some people would say, well, would he have even been, if the Flyers are good, would he have even been? No, he's a good player. He's a good player. And you can tell he's a good player because the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are undoubtedly a good team, a contending team, traded a first-round pick to put him in their bottom six. So it's a bummer that Scott Laughton didn't play for a better Flyers team for the bulk of his time here. That's what bums me out. Similarly to how I felt about Giroux when his tenure was over.
We might have a Brad Marchand update. Looks like Florida might be getting Brad Marchand.
Yo, spicy.
That is such a Florida guy. Imagine
him and Kachuk together.
I think the
I'm going to do the thing when I get verification, because Elliot Friedman said last minute possibility hearing Brad Marchand could be traded to Florida.
Imagine being the Leafs, and it's like the boogeyman, the Bruins are gone, and now the favorites in the East got that guy.
That would be just having like PTSD flashbacks on the ice in a series against Florida when you see Brad Marchand skating up the ice and you're like, oh no, it's happening again. We can't get away from him.
He will fit, if he does end up in Florida, he will fit so well on that team.
Florida or Vegas just seemed like, why wouldn't Brad Marchand play for one of those teams?
I also do appreciate, I will always, and I've said this so many times, I appreciate few things more than a full-fledged commitment to a bit. And I appreciate that Florida is just full-fledged committing to the bit of being the annoying villains.
Yeah, man, we're dirty.
Yeah.
Stop us.
Yeah, like, what are you going to do?
But also
we just beat McDavid.
Well, yeah, I mean, now it's Kachuk, Bennett, and Marchand, like, all in the top six.
Yeah. See, that's the way that you do it. You get the good rats, not just guys that are rats. You got to get the really, really good. Exactly.
Come on, you good
know who you
rats,
are and
send
just
you to
embrace it.
heaven.
Florida is embracing the fact that they are real good and real unlikable.
I love them.
Just go for it. Yeah, absolutely.
I personally enjoy the heck out of that team.
Yeah, Elliot said last minute possibility hearing Marchand could be traded to Florida. That's so interesting.
I wonder what they're giving up.
Yeah, that'll be
That's
interesting.
my question.
Myrtle's also saying he doesn't think the Leafs are done yet. So a couple things worth
They're
watching.
coming back for
I
Risto
was
to
gonna
fight
say, do they have room for
Marchand.
Risto?
That's
Do they
right.
have
We're
room?
pailing. Take them. Take everybody.
Take everybody.
Take
How
everybody
about
at Michkov
an
and
Igor
connecting.
Zamula?
Oh, Zamula,
He's
please.
cheap.
Take my Zamula, please.
There were some rumors popped up with regards to Zamula. I never expected he was going to get moved.
Yeah.
But what I will say is I'm encouraged that they were listening.
Yes.
I mean, because to me, Zamula is a guy who he's not that relevant in the grand scheme of things. Like he could be eventually a solid third pair defenseman. But to me, especially if you're kicking the can down the road on moving Risto, you got to clear some spots for these young defensemen. Yeah. And if you're not going to trade Risto right away, Zamula this offseason, if you're going to, let's say they go into next season with Ristolainen still on the roster, I think then you have to trade Zamula because Emil Andre is ready.
Yes.
You can't keep him down in the minors another year. That would be stupid.
Yeah, or you have to trade Andre, and it would be very silly to trade Andre before you trade Zamula.
Yes, agreed.
I mean, if they trade Zamula, I don't think it's any big loss, but just in terms of like asset management, young, cheap, under team control for a few more years, like I just don't think you give one of those guys away.
I don't think you give him
even
away.
If he's your 7. Like
I don't think you give him away, but also if he's your 7, then his value is only going to go down. So if you can get a third-round pick for him, I say go for it.
I mean, in this market, who the hell knows? Maybe you get a third for him. I just think that would be...
Well, it looks like the deadline's basically over.
It's 3:05.
We always still pending league call, but told Brad Marchand is going to Florida.
Okay.
That's going to be fun.
Once I get the verification, we'll get the horn.
I know who I'm going for
in
the playoffs
now that it is after 3 o'clock. Rasmus Ristolainen, and I know we never... It was kind of like, he ain't getting traded. No. He is not getting traded. It appears. I think there's a bunch of reasons for it. Like, who the hell has $5 million just as a start? And I do think it's smart not to retain on him simply because, as Charlie pointed out, his contract goes that one extra year. And I don't want dead money on the cap going into 2026-27. Like, that's just... This thing is finally, there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's getting cleaned up. I don't want to just tack on another thing, even if it's like, oh, $2.5 million, who cares? I do.
So here's my theory on what happened with Ristolainen. And I'll need to do some digging tonight to see if this theory is close to what it was, but it just fits. So I know that Kevin Kerr has reported all week that there wasn't a ton of interest in Ristolainen. And I had heard similar things, that there was far more interest in Laughton than Ristolainen. I suspect the big reason for that was that teams didn't want to take on that big of a salary. There are only so many teams that can, and the Flyers didn't want to retain. Then midway through the week, Anthony DeMarco reports that the Flyers are willing to retain, which was notable to me because everything I've heard for the past few months is that they don't want to retain salary on Risto. Then you get the tweet from Drager this morning saying, big ask on Ristolainen, first prospect and player. Here's my theory. I think what it was that was the ask if they were retaining.
Okay.
That it was basically like, well, if you just want to trade for him, then we'll keep the ask reasonable. If you want us to retain, because we don't want to retain, you're going to have to give us a ton. And they kind of knew that, well, probably not going to happen, but why not give it a shot if there's anybody out there that like really likes Risto, but just doesn't have the money to take him on. That's the way I kind of think it worked out, which is why I think that the offseason is the time if he's going to get moved. Maybe they won't move him. I think they should move him. I would have pushed harder to move Risto versus Laughton, but it does look like the market was larger for Laughton than Risto in terms of it fitting their overall timeline and the financials and everything.
Also, you guys have been saying forever that like he seems more like an off-season move.
I just think it's at that price.
Yeah,
like, yes, the
money.
cap is going up. It doesn't change people's teams' financial situations this season. And if you want to create a like, oh yeah, like 3 teams can afford him. Like Columbus is the closest thing to a contender that can get him. Like, maybe this Laughton return, it may be not exactly as much as we expected, but end of the day, a first and a prospect, I'll absolutely take it.
I mean, that's pretty darn good for a guy who's like a bottom 6 forward on most teams.
There was yes, exactly. But there was supposedly like a bidding war for him, or at least multiple teams interested. And when you see that they retained, like, yeah, a lot of teams could afford Laughton at that price. I'm not interested in retaining on Risto, and if they can get it done this offseason, that is important. My question about Risto at this point, like, yeah, why wasn't there a market? I think there's a bunch of reasons. Why the hell isn't he begging to get out? Like, that's my question. So
playoff Risto is just a myth.
Like, people hate moving.
He's 30
people
years old.
Hate moving.
I say it all the time.
He's 30 years old. He'll be 31 in October. So next year's his age 31 season. He is now basically guaranteed to have 12 consecutive seasons every year. 12 years, 772 regular season NHL games and counting. 0 playoff games. He is going to be one of the all-time, like, oh, yeah. Well, like when he finally eventually does make a playoff, like, oh, yeah, it took him, like Jeff Skinner this year probably.
To never make the playoffs in the NHL where 8 teams
Everyone
from
makes
each conference makes it is insane.
Like, I just don't understand how he's not begging to get out of here. And maybe behind the scenes, he's like, you know what? It would be nice, but he's just not going to pull Seth Jones and be like, this team sucks, send me away. Like, maybe he's just not that kind of guy. And that's cool. But I just can't imagine he's fulfilled here.
Hockey players so rarely do that, though.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not.
Oh,
like,
that's because all of them make the playoffs most years.
But they're all like,
That's fair.
They're all just like dumb. Like, you know, Connor McDavid signs for 8 years in Edmonton.
Well,
Why?
they did come within a
have
game
to.
of winning the cup last year.
Yeah, like 6 years later.
Yeah, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, like they never want to leave anywhere. They always stick with the team that they're with. Like,
Moving stinks. It's real
people
bad.
always make fun of me for saying that,
They
but
can
I will
afford
maintain.
They can afford to hire the
no
right
one
people to
wants
do
to
it
move.
for
It still
It's
sucks.
the Greg Wyshynski. My stuff is here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
My
You know
stuff
how
is
hard it is to
here.
move a pinball machine?
but
We're talking
also-
about rich people
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly. I
But
got big stuff.
you have your whole life. You know, you have your
Yeah.
family, you have your friend. Maybe not your family from Risto's standpoint because he's Finnish, but you have your
girlfriend
friends,
here,
you have your
right?
social life. You don't necessarily want to leave that. And one thing you do have to also say about hockey players, professional athletes in general, they all have egos, and they all think that they can turn it around, that this year is going to be the year that the media is wrong and the fans are wrong. We're going to be a real good team, and this is the year. And not saying that players don't have the ability to accurately evaluate their current situation, but a lot of guys don't. A lot of guys go into every year thinking we're a real good team and we have a chance to win it all in a way that fans and analysts just will never believe.
And I get that. Just in terms of Risto and maybe a reason there wasn't a market, Kelly and I talked about this last night. You look at what defensemen have done under Torts and Shaw. Like, they resurrected Nick Seeler. Travis Sanheim just made freaking Team Canada. I like Travis Sanheim. Is he one of the 6 or 7 best Canadian NHL defensemen? I don't think so. But he's had those sorts of at least stretches under Torts, and like Risto, the reputation before he gets here, and then now what he is. You see what happened with Sean Walker last year. He's one of our most, if not our most effective defensemen last season. Goes to Colorado in a lesser role and isn't close to that guy. Do you think maybe there's some Torts Shaw effect? Like, yeah, he's good in Philly, and it looks like he's turned his career around, but it's not going to work here because we don't have Torts and Shaw?
It's possible. I think it just depends on the team, because, yeah, there might be some teams that are skeptical, but there's probably other teams that are convincing themselves that we need the big, physical, intimidating defenseman. So I've never viewed, compare him to Mikko Rantanen. There's not a team in the NHL that wouldn't be interested in Mikko Rantanen. Whereas I think there are teams in the NHL that are like, yeah, we don't want to be bothered with Rasmus Ristolainen. And then there are other teams that are like, oh, no, we really want to be bothered with Rasmus Ristolainen because we need a guy like that. I think that he has a little bit more of a niche market.
Oh.
Okay, what do we got?
Colorado is bringing back Erik Johnson.
Oh! Erik Johnson at the
Danny
last
Briere
possible
making
moment.
moves.
That was one of the guys I was like, okay, maybe Kuzmenko, maybe Erik Johnson, expiring contract, UFA at the end of this season. What is he, 37 years old? He's passed 1,000 games. He hasn't played a ton this year. Good. What do we get back? Is
we don't
there
know yet.
No return?
Probably very little.
There's a lot in the queue right now. So, the Leafs are getting Brandon Carlo. That's going through. The Sens are trying to close a deal to get Fabian Zetterlund from San Jose. And then this Erik Johnson deal, that's all stuff that's trying to get hammered out right now. So once I get a return, I'll hit the buzzer or whatever, hit the siren. But right now, we just know Colorado is getting Erik Johnson.
What do you think is going to be? Higher or lower than a 5th round pick?
Seventh round pick.
What did the Flyers
Get that
trade for him
7th
last year?
I don't remember.
Was it a 4th? Or I think it was a 4th?
Wow,
So
really?
a 5th.
So a 5th?
Over under on a 5th round pick.
Let's see. I'm looking it up.
Because I remember it being one round earlier than I would have been willing to trade for Erik Johnson. So I feel like 4th.
Isn't that what you're supposed to do?
4th round pick.
4th round pick. So let's say 5th.
Yeah.
5th or
Over
6th.
under. Yeah. Okay.
Let's just get that 7th back because I want that.
You just
7th.
want that
You
7th
need
round pick.
another
Gotta
seven.
get-
You
gotta
can't
get-
have too many.
Got to get my. I always have a guy. I remember a few years ago it was Stepan Falkovsky.
It's a cool name.
Yeah, just a cool name guy. It's probably a Belarusian. That I want to bring in, and it's always I'm one of those scouts that Brian Burke would be like, we're leaving.
Yeah.
No,
No, we need this guy.
We don't care if you like his name.
We're gonna have Rachel Doerrie joining us in the very near future. I do want to talk about a few other things, but yeah, this Erik Johnson move. Danny Briere. Last season he did what he had to do. That was you trade Sean Walker. There's no question, and he gets his price. I want to talk about Ryan Johansson too in a little bit. Remind me of that.
God, I
But
forgot about
that
that.
was what that was like. It was a necessary. It wasn't even I guess getting your asking price is good, but it wasn't even a thing you judge him on because he had to do it. This year, all right, you have Kuzmenko and Johnson, upcoming UFAs. You get something for guys that you wouldn't get anything for. And you finally move on from Scott Laughton and basically get your price. Danny Briere, grade today. I mean, he did a hell of a job, I think.
He did stuff. He was a man of action. He had a bias for action today, folks. A bias for action. He made some stuff happen. Would you have liked to have seen a Ristolainen deal? Yeah, sure. But I'm glad he kind of held firm on his price. It's a good deal for Laughton. I'm excited to see what we get back for Erik Johnson, the 7th round pick or whatever it is. Overall, I'm happy.
So this means that maybe Zamula could be our 7 and we could get Andrei back.
You might be looking a little too far into that. It's possible that they rotate. I think they like Zamula.
I would like that.
They
to
like
happen.
Zamula.
They clearly like Zamula.
They're not
Shut
just
it
going to
down,
bench him.
Kelly.
Maybe they'll call up Andrei, maybe, or maybe they'll call up Grans, who they also feel is close to being NHL ready, or Ginning. Like there are other guys who they could bring up to fill out the lineup.
Enough already with Ginning. He's like the guy in the organization I've decided I'm completely done with.
Okay.
That was
As an aside.
He's the guy you
As
just
an aside,
irrationally
I'm like, enough
just
already
like.
with Adam Ginning.
I get
Okay.
that's actually maybe
I don't want to see him or hear about him again.
maybe one of my, and it's like so low priority that who cares, but a surprise of mine that I think Charlie and I talked about on the show the other day, like lower end guys that maybe it's just time to move on from, make room for other guys who are going to be graduating
Yeah,
soon,
what's his
like
face that got traded?
like an Adam
recently?
Ginning, like they did with Wade Allison last year.
Yeah.
The
like
other guy that got traded recently, for the guy that they were like, all right, he's not going to be a thing here. We're trading him. He was an AHL guy. My brain.
oh,
isn't
the
working.
Ronnie Adder.
Oh, Adder,
Ronnie
yeah,
Adder,
beginning
yeah.
of the season. Yeah,
Ginning
yeah.
is the new Ronnie Adder.
I wondered if they were going to make a move like that with like an Adam Ginning or something, but doesn't appear as if they did.
Doesn't appear.
But low end priority. But
Fraser Mitten going to Boston for the Carlo deal. Thank God I never have to hear that guy's name
you
again.
really,
Charlie,
you
don't
were
like
really.
that guy, huh?
No, because I think what it was that for like 2 days, everyone on Twitter was like losing their minds
that
over,
why you don't like him?
over Fraser Minton. And
Yes.
the more I looked at him, I was like, what is so special about this guy? He's never scored at a high level at pretty much any level. He's big and he's a center. Like, why? Like, for the same people who were getting excited about Fraser Minton are the same people that scream that the Flyers need more high-end talent. Fraser Minton at best is going to be a 3C. Why were people excited about that?
Gotta get your Scott
don't
Laughton
have one of
replacement.
those. I was going to say, do we have a 3C?
They have a lot of those.
Yeah, that's all we
We
have.
have
I
several
think.
4Cs.
We have, perhaps.
There is a deal that will excite Paul Holmgren
Oh.
that's going down
Oh.
right now, where Chicago is receiving Victor Soderstrom, Aku Ratti, and the contract of Shea Weber for
That's
a
still a
sixth-round
thing?
pick.
How are we still trading Shea Weber's
A
contract?
2026 sixth-round pick going
Why
to
can't we
Utah.
trade Ryan Ellis's contract? I miss Arizona. We could have
I
traded
know.
Ellis to
That
Arizona
was-
easily.
Utah is the one getting rid of the contract.
I know,
now.
right? Yeah, I know.
Imagine
We're
just
in the upside down, folks.
there
we need
being
another money laundering.
imagine there being 31 teams and then just one money laundering
deserves
scheme
a-
for all the other 31 teams to work out their problems through. Quite
We did
an
the
what do we got?
No, that was for Shea Weber.
Shea Weber.
I thought you were like something else.
No, if there's something else, I'm
I'm blown away that this Shea Weber contract that Paul Holmgren signed him
It's
to,
hilarious.
like that Nashville matched. This is still getting
It
shuffled
still
around the
exists.
league.
That
The
is
NHL,
hilarious.
the salary cap is great in this
It's
league,
so
man.
stupid.
It's so good.
One thing I was thinking
DeMarco,
about.
by the way, is saying I think a player might be coming back for Erik Johnson.
What?
Okay.
Sure, whatever.
Sure.
Why not?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right.
It's Ryan Johansson again.
Yeah.
He
cool.
got back in the
Wild.
queue.
Cool. The one thing I was thinking
Where's
about
Justin Braun?
over the last
Too late to
maybe
get
like
him back?
10, 15 minutes about the Laughton deal
Yeah.
is, in retrospect, this wasn't a case of Danny Briere like, well, we have our price, and if you meet it, because if that was the case, then why would they have, retained and had those extra picks that they sent? I think they decided they wanted to move Scott Laughton.
Yeah.
Because if the deal was like, if this truly was a situation where Briere was like, well, we'll trade him if you guys give us everything we want, then wouldn't the deal have just been Scott Laughton for a first round pick and the Russian prospect and that's it? No, they added in picks and they added in the retention because they made the decision at some point this week that it was time to move on from Scott Laughton.
You're giving them ammunition to say that Danny Briere could have done a better job
No,
on this trade.
I don't know.
I'm just saying the people that you hate hearing from in your mentions, that's the kind of thing they're going to be like, well, why'd they have to give up the extra picks?
But what I'm
like, they're going to say, like,
I
it's
don't,
gonna happen.
but I don't think that if he like, that was one of those things. Yeah, push it over the finish line. Yeah, I guess you never know. We're not in the room where it happens in terms of like the actual negotiation. So yeah, I guess maybe if Danny would have held to a hard bargain, it's theoretically possible. But what I'm saying is
I'm
that
agreeing with you. Like your read of the situation, I think is probably exactly right. And I think it was a good deal, but I'm just saying there's going to be portions of this fan base, they're going to be like, you said that you wouldn't do it unless you got what you wanted. Why did you do it? You caved.
A decade
what I'm
of
saying?
doing this has really made us all feel
I
great.
know.
Yeah.
My brain is broken.
It's what Twitter has become over the last 4 or 5 years that has broken my brain.
You know what though?
I just
like,
ignore
you
it.
have to give him some credit then for posturing.
Yeah.
Because like people forget that this is like a game of chess that these guys
Yeah.
are playing with each other. And Briere was like setting a high bar by saying, I don't need to trade this guy and I'm not going to unless you make it worth my while. And so teams went into the negotiation knowing that there was a pretty high price for Scott Laughton.
Yeah. I just think that, again, the fact that he threw in those other things tells me that at some point this week he was like, yeah, we're trading Scott. And
We'll get it
if
done.
it comes down to it and a team meets our basic parameters of, we want a first and we want something else, that we'll throw other things back to get it over the finish line.
Yeah.
And we saw him do the same thing with Sean Walker.
Exactly.
Like, I want my first round pick.
Exactly.
And he got it, but he
Yep.
bought it.
Yeah.
Like, he had to, it wasn't just Sean Walker for first straight up. You had to take back the Johansson salary. I thought Friedman last week said that this Monday, 4 days ago, they were hearing the Johansson, the PA in the league were going at it. And he was like, I don't know if it's a 1 day or like a multi-day thing, but I believe Monday they're doing it. It's Friday. We still haven't heard anything. Like,
Have you heard
now the deadline's over.
About what?
John Johansson?
No, I've not heard.
Now the deadline's over. Like, are they just going to sweep this under the rug? Like, how does this end? It's the salary cap in this league. It's just very funny how it gets handled sometimes. What was the next thing I wanted to talk about? It would be.
By the way, if Erik Johnson is indeed headed out of town, the Last Supper was the Last Supper for 2 people in that photo.
Oh, and didn't Erik Johnson put that together?
Yeah.
According
Oh,
to I believe Torts pointed that out. He's like, I think it was like in the middle of an interview. He's like, did you do that? And he was like, yeah. He is. It seems as if he's a great teammate, great locker room guy, and still, it's cool that he gets to go to the place where like he's very much remembered fondly.
Yeah, it's great. We love a feel good story.
Yeah. All right. As we are now waiting for Rachel Doerrie to join us, ESPN contributor, CTO of Betalytics, just a couple of other guys. I really thought last night Nick Deslauriers was making a plea to get out of town. I really thought him playing the way he did last night.
Oh, that's what you're getting. I was like, what are you even talking about?
He played. He was the
Top
best.
notch, Charlie.
He was the best flyer on the ice last night, and I thought this is him saying I could still be a contributor. It was only a few years ago Minnesota got him at the deadline. Like, I thought it was a possibility, and I honestly believe the only thing that stopped it was the Matthew Olivier extension.
You don't think that contract played any part?
No trade is over. He's only signed for, I think, 1 more year. It's all
I just
fine.
meant the fact that it's that contract at
A
all.
lot of money.
Bill, you spent 30 seconds longer thinking about Nick Deslauriers than I did today.
You
So
really
props to
galaxy
you,
brained
sir.
it too.
I'm a big fan. I'm a big
Dino
fan.
guy.
And honestly, once you put the idea of we're getting Matthew Olivier in my head, I couldn't get it out. And then he signed that extension, and I was bummed for a day. But
It would have been a very Flyers thing to do.
Yeah,
Take the
sure
guy
would.
who does the thing against the Flyers, the tough thing, and they're like, yeah, need to get
need
that
that
guy.
guy, right.
It would have been extremely Ed Snyder
it's like
with Jody Shelley and Max Talbot. It would have been just the next version.
it's like the
Some
Bulls getting
names right
Rodman,
there.
man.
Yep.
You know, it's the same thing.
Same thing.
Bulls
good
getting
old days.
Rodman, us getting an enforcer. It's basically the same move. Is there anyone else you thought had a chance to be traded today? I know, like there was the, I think early in the week, the 32 Thoughts, Friedman just mentioned like, yeah, the Flyers and Cam York had contract extension talks early in the year. Nothing happened. And then it was just kind of like ellipsis. Okay, next subject. And that kind of led some people to believe, ooh, I wonder if it's a possibility. Is there anyone like
never-
that?
I never
I'm
thought.
assuming his agent was just waiting to see how much the cap would go up, right?
Well, they know how much the cap is going to go up now.
Now, yeah.
Now they do, but I
Yeah.
mean, like
Like in
earlier
November or
in the
whenever when they
season.
went
Yeah.
to him.
Yeah.
I think there's probably a gap in terms of what York's camp thinks he's
Oh,
worth and what
surely.
the Flyers camp thinks he's worth. But I was not concerned that was going to come to a head at the deadline. Now, would it blow me away if Cam York was traded in a deal for a center in the summer? No, I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility that he could be a big piece in a deal. I also think they like Cam York. They view him as a quality player. as a guy who has a lot going for him in terms of upside. John Tortorella did say earlier this week that he's been very inconsistent since the shoulder injury. So he hasn't developed quite the way they've wanted to yet, but he's young and he's a defenseman. And their organizational view, right or wrong, is that it takes defensemen longer. So I don't think they're going to be racing to give up on him. And I never thought he was a realistic option for the deadline. Zamula probably was the only guy who I wondered, if they're not trading Risto, do they feel like they need to clear out a spot? And then when they traded for Grebenkin, whatever, it's like, okay, well, we got another Russian. Now we can send out a Russian. I wasn't sure. I'm at least encouraged that they thought about it, because that opens the door for the possibility of maybe he could be moved out to clear a spot for a younger guy with more upside this summer.
I thought there was a slim chance. And you look at all the trade boards, I think Peter Mrazek was the only goalie on them, and I'm good on that. But I thought there was a slim chance they get ahead of their goalie problem before the offseason. Maybe they, a mid-pick for someone just to be in a tandem with Ersson next year, because there's no way it's Ersson Fedotov next year, right? I mean, I guess there's a way. It could happen, but
I wouldn't do it. They might do it. I wouldn't.
If they are looking to take a swing in terms of a trade this summer and maybe be a little better and be competitive, I don't think you can do that with Ersson and Fedotov, considering halfway through this year we were on pace for the worst save percentage since TV was in color. I just thought there was a chance. So that's maybe one of my other surprises. They didn't get a goalie. I thought maybe there was a possibility. I don't know how many were available. I didn't have a name in mind.
That's going to hurt the tank big time, Bill. You got to keep the tank going.
I agree. I would start Kolosov every game for the rest of the season, personally. But that isn't what they want to do. Do we know anything about Kolosov being sent down, any of that stuff?
Well, multiple people, this was so not on my radar over the last 24 hours, but I think multiple people reported yesterday that he was getting sent down and that he was going to be down for a bit. So it doesn't seem like this is just a paper transaction. It seems like this was he's going to spend some time in the AHL.
He did something.
He needs every second.
Yeah, he does.
Down there.
He's got to do something. He can't just be sitting around hanging out, collecting an NHL paycheck to hang out with the homies.
And now joining us from Toronto, that's right, the new home of Scott Laughton, we have the CTO of Betalytics, we have ESPN contributor, we have Rachel Doerrie joining us, co-host of the Puck Social podcast. Rachel, on your show this week, you said Scott Laughton's going to be a Leaf or Scott Laughton's going nowhere. You nailed it.
Yep. It's one of those things, right, where it's a perfect fit for everybody. Toronto and Toronto Maple Leafs fans have been wanting Scott Laughton for, it feels like, half a decade at this point. He's a Toronto-ish native, the GTA. We know how that works. I honestly think this is a good deal for both sides. I don't think either side got fleeced. I don't think any of that. I think each side got pieces and retention that they needed, and it's going to be good for each team's timeline. So I'm thrilled as somebody who's allowed to cheer for the Leafs now with what they did today. Obviously not as much as I would have been if Rantanen or whatever was involved, but I think this was a great deal for Philadelphia. I think it's a great deal for Toronto. It's one of those rare deals where it's hey, everyone, good job.
No, so that's now that you are a Leafs fan, you're in the area. I do love he's from the GTA. Isn't 2/3 of the league
Ontario is
couldn't we fill 12 teams with players from there? But anyway, so you are actually enthused, and the Leafs made other moves, but you're actually enthused about the acquisition of Scott Laughton.
Well, okay, so part of when I heard it was Scott Laughton, I was okay, great. And then I heard what was going back, and I was there had better be some retention, because otherwise I will not be very happy. And then I did some math when I found out that it was 50% retained. The Toronto Maple Leafs basically took Ryan Reeves out of the lineup and replaced him with Scott Laughton at an extra $400,000. And I'm well, that is that is more than a $400,000 upgrade. I'll tell you that for free. So I look at that and I go, yeah, really happy about that. Toronto's biggest hole was the third line center. I mean, I've watched they played like 60 odd games. I've probably watched 57 of them. And it is glaringly apparent that they needed that. And the other thing I like about Scott Laughton is he's kind of a jerk. Like in the playoffs, you look at what Florida just did. They have the ultimate rat line. They're going to have Brad Marchand, Sam Bennett, and Matthew Tkachuk on the same line. Murder is going to be legal in the playoffs. It's going to be crazy. Scott Laughton is at least a guy that's like willing to be a dick. And that's kind of one of those things where I think that's important in the playoffs. Like the Leafs get punked in every playoff series they play in, and now they finally have a guy who's like, yeah, that's not going to be a thing anymore.
We were joking when we saw the Marchand trade go down. Like, imagine being the Leafs, the big bad Bruins. They're out of your life. It's over finally, and suddenly, oh yeah, the favorites in the East. They just got that guy. Like, what was your gut reaction to that Marchand trade?
I honestly, I was about to text his sister and be like, are you kidding? Like, what the heck? But here's honestly, I think tinfoil hat on. Brad Marchand is a Bruin through and through, and he is an excellent leader. Do not be surprised if what happened here was basically he allowed them to trade him so he could go on a cup run, and they're recouping assets. If Brad Marchand signs for the Boston Bruins on July 1st, I'm not suggesting that they have a contract in the drawer at all. I'm suggesting that Brad Marchand is a responsible leader who understands the situation that the Bruins are in. And, hey, he can go chase another cup and then come back. No one's saying he's not allowed to do that. And it allows Boston to acquire assets. I mean, I think this is kind of a win-win for the Bruins. At that point, you get the chance to re-sign the guy because – if we're being so serious here, like they're not naming a captain right now. And if he comes back, he's still going to be the captain. So nobody get rid of those jerseys yet. And it's just, as a Leaf fan, I saw that and I was like, I'm going to cry. Like, I hate this.
And no, it's that Keith Tkachuk thing.
He's going to score.
Go on the run with the team and then go right back. And now he's playing with Tkachuk's son. I think it's all funny, but I know you're a professional. You have contacts in the league. I will say, I think they have that contract in a drawer. Like, as soon as they signed, it's like, all right, we're not going to register this yet. You're traded.
And the other thing is like Brad Marchand. Like, I mean, I have been emotionally scarred by him for a number of years, but like. At least, you know what? At least, Toronto and Florida probably aren't going to play in the first round unless Tampa wins the division somehow, which I don't see happening. So, like, if Toronto gets through the first round, if Florida gets through the first round, they're going to meet in the second round. And, like, we talk about, like, Dallas and Colorado being in a psycho war in the first round of the playoffs. Tampa, Florida, or Toronto, Florida, or whoever plays, and then that second round, like, whoever comes out of the Atlantic and the Central is going to be half dead by the time they do.
War of attrition. That's the Stanley Cup playoffs.
This is true. Rachel, wanted to ask you about Nikita Grebenkin, the prospect that the Flyers got in the deal. We spoke with Alex Appleyard, who's one of our contributors, our foreign correspondent, as Bill calls him. He was familiar with him, but as someone who follows the Maple Leafs very closely, what can you tell us about him? What's your view of his quality as a prospect?
Yeah, he's the perfect Philadelphia Flyer. When you think of personality and the way he plays and what Philadelphia Flyer hockey has been since its inception, this is kind of a guy where I'm like, Flyer. It's the Squidward meme, where you kind of just like, yeah, you're a Flyer. He skates well. He's one of those guys where the coach will say, hey, to win tonight, I need you to do this, Nikita. And he'll just look at him and be like, yep, got it. And then go out and do it. So if it's, I need you to skate hard and penalty kill and forecheck, he'll do that. I need you to back check and get in a fight and lay some hits. He's going to do that. Also, his personality is super conducive to a young team because the guy just loves to have fun. I've seen him out and about in Toronto. He is just a ball of fun, constant positive energy. I think he's going to fit really nicely with Michkov because number one, Russian, but number two, that personality I think is going to help draw Michkov's personality out. And I think that's also going to be really helpful to the Flyers because these types of players are at their best when they're able to be fully themselves. And I think any way that you can get that out of Michkov is a great way. And I think Grebenkin is exactly what the Flyers need. He's going to be a bottom six guy who provides you energy, who hits, who fights, who skates really well. but he's also just going to be, he's a guy who can turn momentum because he is not afraid to do anything to win. And I think that that's going to be really, really good for the Flyers.
Okay, and it is Grebenkin. That's the way you say it.
Yeah, okay, so that's the way I've heard him say it.
Okay.
So I'm like,
We'll go with that.
That worked then. Good enough.
That's official. As far as I'm-
Well,
Sounds
Elite
like a good
Prospect
torch guy.
still has the Y in there, and it's not on Hockey Reference, so I'm just guessing.
Yeah.
And I can't pronounce like my own name, basically.
This is true. You're still trying to figure out how to pronounce February.
And
So.
it's like
Melts?
yeah, I can't pronounce one of the 12 months. Like it's tough for me. Rachel, just looking like zooming out,
Okay,
taking
Bill, before I have to jet,
Oh.
might be getting Danny in the next half an hour, so I'm going to head to Voorhees to get that interview done.
give him a
I
give him
feel
a
like
hug and a
that's
kiss.
important.
Yeah, give him
Give him a hug and a
on the
kiss for
forehead
me.
us.
All right.
Pat on the head.
Tell him we said good job, buddy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, Rachel.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Charlie.
Rachel, like zooming out now, we don't have to do all Flyer stuff. A lot went on today. Just looking at the winners and losers, a lot of big moves were made. The Mikko Rantanen trade. I saw you guys even got Brandon Carlo right before the deadline. A lot went on. Give me your 2 winners and 2 losers at this deadline.
Okay, so Dallas has to be a winner. I feel like that's kind of a cop-out answer, is it not? Like that's kind of a cop-out. Like so what's wild is like they would be a winner if they just got Rantanen, right? The fact that they signed Wyatt Johnston to $8.4 million is frankly like the fact, honestly, Jim Nill and Nico Harrison operating business in the same building has to create like the most whiplash effect for Dallas sports fans, because it's like you got one guy who is the laughing stock of the sports world, and you got another guy who should win GM of the year. Like getting Wyatt Johnson signed, getting Mikko Rantanen traded for and signed and then you got like Mikhail Granlund and Cody Ceci, like just outrageous business done by the Dallas Stars. I also think Colorado is a major, major winner here. You got Martin Necas, you got Jack Drury, and that's great. I don't think that's enough. But then you turned around and you got Brock Nelson and Charlie Coyle. So your center depth just went from Nathan McKinnon and a band of merry men to Nathan McKinnon, Brock Nelson, Charlie Coyle. Like that's a problem. And I think the Central and the Atlantic is going to be just all-out war, which is why I kind of look at this now and I go, are the Vegas Golden Knights sneaky here because they might not have a ton of issues getting out of their division the way that the Oilers are currently playing? And from a loser perspective, 2 teams that are Canadian, the Oilers lost today, and I'm allowed to say this with like glee across my face, the Vancouver Canucks, like what are you doing? It's seriously, like it's just outrageous to me that you didn't trade Brock Besser in the seller market. Edmonton, I don't understand. Like, yeah, I like the acquisition of Wallman. The fact that you didn't get a goaltender is just unacceptable to me. I look at that and I'm like, you can't have that. And I thought those 2 teams actually could have made a deal. I think Besser would have been a great fit in Vancouver or in Edmonton from Vancouver next to Leon Draisaitl or Connor McDavid. They need a scoring winger. And so for me, Edmonton and Vancouver today, like just unacceptable to do nothing.
I just saw that Pittsburgh didn't move Raquel either, which I think that's also a big mistake on their part. They did not nearly sell enough for how bad that team is.
It seems like a lot of the big moves, especially like the acquisitions, are out west. This East playoff race, the East isn't great, but it's very interesting to me. I can't wait to see who comes out of it. But
the 3 best teams are all in the same division at this point. Like I mean, Washington didn't do anything, and I get like why. But you look at Florida, you look at Tampa, and now you look at what Toronto did. Like, it's hard to make the argument that, like, Washington kind of got left behind here. Like, acquiring Anthony Beauvillier is just, like, not going to cut it when Florida went out and got Brad Marchand and Seth Jones. Toronto got Brandon Carlo and Scott Laughton. And then Tampa went out and reacquired Yanni Gourde and got Oliver Bjorkstrand. Like, it kind of seems like Washington didn't do a ton. And as much as I think Washington is a good team, we haven't seen a lot of these players in the playoffs. And we have seen a whole lot of Florida and a whole lot of Tampa in the playoffs. I will reserve my Toronto comments because they are well documented of what I think of some of those players in the playoffs. But I mean, I'm taking Florida and Tampa in any series over Washington right now.
Speaking of Toronto, Chris Johnston just reported that the Pens are acquiring Connor Timmins from Toronto.
Kyle Dubas, how we doing?
There you go. Who do you think gets these wild card spots, Rachel, in the East? Right now, just by total points, we're looking at Columbus and Ottawa. The Rangers are right there. Detroit's right there. Most of the East is basically right there within a point or two. How do you think this wild card comes down?
So I think the Rangers do get into the playoffs. And the reason I say that is I'm making the calculation that I think the Devils are in a heap of trouble right now. Number one, like somebody was yelling at me on Twitter today, like that they shouldn't go acquire Mikko Rantanen for long term because like they're not a contender, or they are a contender this year. And I was like, I'm sorry, the New Jersey Devils are not a contender without Jack Hughes. That is just straight up false. Like, what are you saying? But I still thought that the Devils acquiring Rantanen would have been a good idea, because immediately next year they are a contender. And if they added Rantanen, they would have been. So I think they're in a bit of trouble. I think they could slide out potentially. They're one injury, and Dougie Hamilton is out, away from being in big trouble. So I look at this. I think the Rangers are going to get in. I do like what they've done. They also have Igor Shesterkin, who is, when he's on his best, he's the best goaltender in the Metropolitan Division. And so I think that's a calculation I make. To me, it comes down to Columbus and Ottawa. I like what Ottawa did. I'm just not sure that it's necessarily enough. And Columbus looks really good. They're playing well. They made some acquisitions over the deadline. They didn't sell off any. I thought they were going to get Brock Besser at one point. But Columbus is kind of one of those teams where it's kind of lightning in a bottle a little bit. And I mean, how do you not root for them, right? Like that's kind of one of those things. I think everyone here wants to see Columbus get in the playoffs right now. And so I'm going to say this. I think the Devils probably get in, but in a wild card spot, or they just barely stay in that third spot. And I'm going to go Columbus and the Rangers for the wild card spots. But I will say this. It's going to come down to the last weekend. Like I think those three teams are going to come down to last weekend.
All right, before we let you go, I can't possibly let the CTO of Betalytics, and last time we spoke, you were launching the new site. I hope all is going well, but I can't possibly let you go before we talk about the Calder Trophy race. Celebrini still pretty prohibitive favorite, minus 220. Hudson's there at plus 215. Michkov 10-1. Dustin Wolf 22-1. How do you think this shakes out?
This is so stupid to me. Like, I don't understand this. Like, Dustin Wolf should be the prohibitive favorite at this point. Like, the fact that he's 25-1, I do not understand this. Like, Calgary is nowhere near the playoffs without his play. It is infinitely more difficult to be a goaltender than it is to be any other position as a rookie. And the fact that he is the only player that hasn't had an injury or a performance lull all season long. Celebrini's had an injury. Hudson has had 2 performance lulls. Michkov's had performance lulls. Like, it's ridiculous to me. And then outside of Wolf, I don't even have Celebrini. I have Lane Hudson, because the guy is approaching like Larry Murphy, Ray Bourque, Chris Chelios level history here. And yeah, Celebrini's having a good year, but he's not anywhere near history. And so for me, I think those are the top 3. I have Michkov at 4, but Dustin Wolf, the disrespect for me is just it's totally ridiculous. And then Lane Hudson, I think if you're going to go with a skater, I think it has to be Lane Hudson, because he's making history. He has a ton of points, and he's a defenseman. And it's not like he's playing on a team where he's being all that sheltered. He is being sheltered somewhat, but he's still having to play tough minutes. He's still averaging well over 20 minutes a game. So for me, I look at that and I go, yeah, like, playing defense is really hard. I have Dustin Wolf, then Lane Hudson, then Macklin Celebrini.
All right, Rachel, thank you for joining us. I hope to talk to you again soon. Always a pleasure when Rachel Doerrie joins us. Where can people find your work?
Yeah, you can go to Betalytics.com. Like Bill said, we've got a brand new website, and you can get trends for free. So I know a lot of other sites make you pay for trends. You get them on our site for free. I'm not going to charge you for stuff that you can look up on other websites. So you can get projections, you can get trends. That's where like all of my stuff is. And then the Puck Social podcast, got a brand new studio, which is super fun. And then I'm on TikTok, Puck Bucks. That's where you can find me. That's where a lot of my stuff's going to live.
All right. Until next time. Thank you, Rachel. All right. And, I was just quoting some odds, and those odds came from one of our great sponsors here. What are we pointing to?
Your wife is in the chat.
Oh, Ava's
Look what
watching.
she said.
Hello, Ave.
No, read it.
You have to put it up on the screen, Bryn. You know I'm blind. I
love
always
Ava
had
so
20/20
much.
vision. I started here. It went away. Hey, Bill, I hope you still wanted to go to Raw tonight. I just bought you a floor seat. You worked so hard, and I'm beyond proud of you. Love you. Go Flyers.
Ava is
No.
the best.
It's SmackDown. But Ava, see, this is why it's so hard to be. I can't imagine how hard it is to be married to me.
Oh, well, actually, it's SmackDown.
Legit, I watched.
That was for you, just
Ava, you're just the absolute best. Oh my God. I was like looking at obstructed view seats like before we went live.
What a
And
doll.
you're
just
my
amazing.
wife rules. I don't know what else to say other than whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365.
Oh, Bill.
I was just,
by the way, I could use
Steve,
that.
I got to do the ad read.
Of course.
Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. The odds I just quoted to Rachel for the Calder race came straight from the Bet365 website. Maybe you're like her and you think Dustin Wolf is being seriously undervalued at 22-1. You can jump on it right now at Bet365. They're our presenting sponsor today and every single day here at PHLY Flyers. They're my sportsbook of choice, and I think you should check them out. And you should do it right now because we have breaking news from Bet365. New customers now get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5, win or lose. Sign up, use the code PHLY365, deposit $10, and place a bet for $5 to get $150 in bonus bets, whether your bet wins or loses. Bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older. Must be 21 or older and physically located in PA. If you or somebody who has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. And while we're here, I got to tell you about our friends at TrueMark Financial Credit Union. It's almost spring, and that means it's time to spring into savings. If you have financial goals, whether it's buying a house, taking that dream vacation, or building your emergency fund, TrueMark Financial Credit Union has the perfect savings account for you. TrueMark Financial offers high-rate certificates and money market accounts to help your money grow faster and work harder. Visit TrueMark.com for rates to learn more. TrueMark Financial, federally insured by the NCUA, equal opportunity lender. Rates are subject to change.
Hey, Bill, are you ready for this?
Y'all ready for this?
We got an official. Frank Saravalli is
It
now
finally
reporting
is- it's
what
finally
we're getting
through?
back for that Erik Johnson. Giovanni Smith.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
He's a
everyone
bit of
knows
a
who
fighter,
that
I think
is.
is what I've heard.
Good for him.
Grapevine
We're being
there.
told by the
being told.
experts in the BSH Slack that he's an AHL guy, and it's just that's what he is. Like, it's not a thing, really.
Yeah.
Nah, whatever. I mean, I didn't
Giovanni
expect.
Smith, that is your return for Erik Johnson. Also,
I did not
former
expect to
Flyer-
get anything back.
Former Flyer Nicolas Aube-Kubel is moving back into the division, traded from the Buffalo Sabres to the New York Rangers for Eric Brandstrom.
What did you used to call him?
Okay.
The Knack?
Well,
Knack,
his
knack,
fan
knack.
group was the NAKGB.
That's right, the NAKGB.
Ah,
That's what it
yes.
was.
NAKGB,
Yeah.
yes.
All right.
So the
uh,
NAKGB is delighted to see him back.
They're
in the
moving
division.
I'm gonna assume we have like a million super chats.
Machi.
I want to do our
Machi.
tankathon spin. I want to do our daily spin, and then we'll get to the super chats. So Brenna, just bring up tankathon
Feeling
when
good
you
about it
can.
today.
I'm feeling good. Someone tweeted us earlier. They had one spin, and the Flyers moved from 7-1. They remain in that 7 hole after today. Kind of thinking it's good. Odds are going to
It's a good
improve,
day.
but
It's
as
a
of
good
now,
day.
they're at 7. Brenna, spin that wheel. Down to 8. All right. Well, that's our tankathon spin for today.
It's got to lose
Never-
some games first.
Yeah,
I
it's,
never trust that thing anyway.
Yeah.
It's fake. It's not real.
It
Yeah.
is. It's fake news.
it's funny. There was just an article that came out like when Tankathon first launched is when the Sixers are in the in the process years, and so like all of their traffic was Philadelphia basically.
Hilarious.
Like, and it's like what made them. They were just like this little thing, and then they became like it's Tankathon. We do it every day now. It's in hockey. It's not even the NBA, but now the Sixers are bad again, and so their traffic. It's like Sixers fans are home. They're at tankathon.com again. Like the guy who founded the site is happy that we're back.
The
I love
process is back, baby.
All right, let's get to these super
Super
chats.
chats.
I am sure we have quite a few here. Let's start it out with Benjamin Branscombe. It's the gang. Hell yeah. Charlie had to dip out. He's going to go
He's gonna go be a
talk to Danny
professional.
Briere. But
Yeah.
I like this. This is the first time the four of us have ever been together on the
Yeah,
show.
good times.
We
Yeah,
we
that's
made it
nice.
work on camera. I thought our dynamic worked. I love the siren. I just, we've never done it before. 4 people's a lot.
It is a lot.
2 hours makes it easier.
You
Yeah.
brought it up, so I got to do it.
There you go. This thing. Oh
I need
my
that
God.
thing on
This
every
was your
show.
idea. For
There's
the record.
probably like people because we're on the 7th floor in our building, and like the stuff below us is just like there's
Normal
like
things.
yeah, like an art school or something, and like a real estate
Everyone's like-
agency. There's probably like people evacuating the building.
Oh my God! There's
Every
a
5
fire
minutes.
sale.
Nah, man.
What's that?
Just that Flyers podcast.
Yeah.
All right. This next one here from I believe Will Wadsworth. Thoughts on retaining with Lotz? Isn't that both slots, including
That is,
Kuzmenko?
yes.
Yeah, they had only Kevin Hayes in the
But
retained.
again, Kuzmenko is for 19 games.
Yeah, it's just till July 1st. Now, like
Yeah.
Charlie said, that maybe complicates things at the draft a
Could do,
little.
yeah.
But to me, the only real trade of consequence that they're going to be making, like for a player, would be moving out Ristolainen. And I am not interested in retaining.
No.
No.
I know they should trade him, and you should probably take what you can get, especially at 50%. Like, we can talk
No.
about a little, but I do not want to retain
But
half of 5.1 for a guy who's pretty good.
No, and also like the whole benefit I think of waiting till the offseason to trade him is that you're less likely
Teams
to
can
have
afford
to
him.
retain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I feel like if they trade him, they're not the requirement to retain is not going to be as strong as it would be if you're trading him at the deadline.
Yeah, it's not ideal. Obviously, retaining with Laughton isn't what you want to do.
That's fine.
But at the end of the day, like he did last year with Sean Walker, Danny Briere said, "How do we get to what I want?" And he
got
made
there.
it work.
Yeah, there you
And
go.
that's all I can ask for. I don't care about a 4th and a 6th.
Don't
and
care.
Again, like that 1.5 mil, it doesn't complicate what the financial outlook is because it still ends when
When it's go
Kevin
time.
Hayes ends.
Exactly.
Cam Atkinson is done after this year. So, like, when everything opens up, he comes off as well.
Yep.
And we are
We're good.
right where we were in 2020, summer 2026 with a big bag of money.
That's go time.
All right. Let's see who is next here.
Tyler Ryan.
Tyler Ryan says, does retention on Laughton even really matter? Because isn't when his contract up, all the money comes
Look
off
at you
the books.
answering questions ahead of time. You're so good.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time on Puckpedia between
Yeah.
like the end of the game last night and this morning.
called
Yeah,
research.
exactly, Tyler. All right, Gary B. We're hearing from our friend Gary. Do we know some of the offers Danny turned down for Laughton?
I don't think we ever really know those things. Sometimes rumors come out, but I don't think
This
you
is-
ever really
Like,
know.
unless Danny Briere tells
Yeah, unless
me
Danny
himself.
Briere tells me
This
over
is-
a beer or something.
Yeah, this
like,
is
none of them are
why
real.
Marek says every GM, like once they're retired and out of the game, needs to write a book. Because like every fan base would want to know what did and
Oh, yeah.
didn't happen and why.
Like that Brian Burke thing you mentioned
Yeah,
earlier.
exactly.
Yeah.
You owe it to like the sport and the fans to like, hey, it's over. Here's what happened. This is the Lindros story, like from Bobby Clark. Like,
Oh,
how
God.
fun would that be to read?
I don't know. It
I
actually
don't
kind of
know.
sounds
I
like
mean,
a
it might give
nightmare.
me an aneurysm, honestly.
It would be entertaining.
Yeah.
Like as like a Hulu series, that would be great.
Oh,
All right. From what does this say here?
D-Phil?
Philly 9. If they're looking at 26 free agent ads, do you think the Ellis contract gets moved? If we move on from Tort/Rocky, does Shaw stay? I think Tort stays in the organization.
Yes.
And I believe like Brad Shaw is not a young man either. He's never really had that like head coaching, even a ton of interviews or anything. I could see him becoming like that head of player development or something. Like a role where he's still kind of doing what he's doing in terms of teaching,
Yeah.
but maybe not behind the bench if they bring in a whole new staff.
But also, like, I know that head coaches usually like to bring in their guys.
Yeah.
But like, if we end up with Mike Sullivan, who's kind of like collaborates with Torts anyway,
That's a possibility.
and you see what Shaw has done here, like, you'd kind of be a little crazy to send him
No,
off.
and like, listen, Jeff Stoutland, the offensive line coach of the Eagles, Chip Kelly brought him in. He's on his 3rd coaching staff,
Yeah.
and if they fire Nick Sirianni
Sean's-
tomorrow,
yeah.
Jeff Stoutland will remain the offensive line coach for the next coach. Like,
Shaw's
Stoutland
real good.
University.
So like,
maybe Shaw is kind of thought of in that regard, at least by the organization. And our theory has always been it's going to be Mike Sullivan.
yeah.
And
theory.
Yes, they are. He is a Torts disciple.
Yeah.
You know, he worked for Torts. Torts just coached under him at Four Nations. It would make sense. So I think Shaw stays
I think there's a
in the
solid
org
chance he
in
could.
some way.
Yeah.
And if it is Mike Sullivan, like there's a great chance he's just continues what he's
Mhm.
doing. All right. From Aviator, would have liked to see Danny get creative with that retention slot and get more assets. Not a fan of retaining on Laughton in this market.
Why are you making yourself mad over these little details?
Why
It's
do
a
you have to
good-
be mad?
It's a good trade.
Like, all right, say they do, like, the one thing I thought, because like our social media guy Chris did a great job today, and we're like watching the details trickle in, and I just had to, like, I literally closed my laptop and was like, I'm just waiting 10 minutes because this is ridiculous. Like, we just keep seeing a new piece to this every 4 seconds. And I said, I bet this is a 3-team trade. Like, when I saw the 4 and the 6 going, I thought they're sending that to a third team
It's
who is going to
retain.
retain on Laughton. It's not ideal. Like, it's not what you want to do, but you got a first and you got a pretty decent prospect by all accounts who seems to at least be familiar with Matvei
I feel
Michkov.
like Doerrie would have told us if he sucked. So,
Yeah. Everyone seems to like his upside in the game he plays. And honestly, Flyers do need to get bigger.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah, I
If
also
$1.5 million is what it costs you to get a first-round pick for Scott Laughton, I'm not mad at it.
I don't care.
Yeah, again,
I just don't care. I'm
Yeah,
so
it just
tired of
doesn't-
like rain
That-
my
it-
hands over retention.
It doesn't
slots. Like,
affect anything, is
Exactly.
what my
if this
like.
team was going for the cup next year, sure,
then it would be annoying.
I'd be annoying.
Absolutely.
Or if this was the
They are
summer
not
they were
going for the
supposed to
cup
go
next
for it.
year.
Right.
They're probably not going for the cup in 2 years. Like, it's a rebuilding process.
2026
so,
was always the year that they were going to put the pedal down.
yeah,
They can
let's
still
put the
do
pedal
that.
on the metal then.
It's
but, like,
fine.
Who cares? Just do that stuff for now. I don't think you have to be more creative. It's Scott Laughton.
Yeah,
it's a bottom 6 player.
You
that
got
you're getting a first round
first
pick
and a dude.
and a guy, like
Yeah.
a guy who can play hockey tomorrow. Like, cool. Like, I'm happy.
a good
with
trade.
it. Yeah, it's a good trade.
I wonder if he's like, because he played 7 NHL games. He's obviously like, he's turns, I think, 22 in May.
Mhm.
He's grown up. Wonder if he's like in the NHL right away.
Could be.
I'm interested.
I mean, why not? Might as well, right? See what
like
happens.
if it's him or Deslauriers, why not give him a shot?
Exactly.
Although, again, Deslauriers, best player on the ice
All
last
right.
night. So
Settle
Oh,
he played excellent. I
I
don't
know.
All right.
a little mafia over here.
Before we go any further, just want to say we appreciate those of you watching on TV. For the end of the show, check out allphly.com. All right. Next one here is from Dorsal. We could trade for a C, or what seems smart to me is offer sheet, Rossi or Velarde. Velarde's interesting to me. Watching him a couple of times, I like him.
There are some.
I've moved on from Marco Rossi. I think that was a year or two ago move, and now
You're
we
over
need
him now?
Yeah, it's something
over?
else now.
Okay. I mean,
Okay.
there
I'm
are
into
some spicy offer sheet options this summer.
There are.
I'm into getting spicy. I'm into big game hunting.
Yeah.
Whatever we're going with.
Pew pew pew.
And that would be,
Take
so
him
we get to
down.
make our pick. Yeah, because that would be July 1st, obviously. So that's after the draft. So we get our pick this year, which could
Mhm.
very well end up being a top 5 pick. And then it's your own draft picks from there.
Yeah.
Totally cool with an offer sheet.
Yep.
But I do want to make
Yeah.
want to make this pick this year because it's like has a good chance to be the highest pick we get.
Oh, yeah.
Could be.
Like they're at the spot right now where they got Michkov. 5 is where they got Cutter, turns it into Drysdale. Like, I don't know, you could use another one.
Could. Yeah.
All right.
Tank.
Will.
From another from Will Wadsworth. The prospects aren't ready because of Lappy.
You're not going to get any argument out of me, buddy.
That's
It
you're
doesn't
speaking,
help, that's for sure.
You're speaking Kelly's language right now.
I don't know how many. I mean, Charlie was talking about the offensive prospects earlier, though. Like,
Don't understand why.
I just don't think
We're
outside of
keeping 'em
Luchenko,
around.
there's that many exciting guys right now.
Not exciting guys, but guys that have been in the AHL long enough that they should be further along, I think. Like Samu Tuilamala should be ready to play some NHL games.
Yeah, and like we saw some. Like,
Why
again,
isn't
I
he?
wish I had seen more, but we saw some flashes of that talent in the preseason.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I agree to a degree, but like,
There's just like
I just
That's-
also think it's a little thin at offense
zero
right now.
empirical evidence that
That's-
Ian LaPerriere is a good coach.
It gets back to the
None.
conversation we had so much about Hextall and his drafting. Like, yeah, the draft can be a crapshoot. Everyone misses. There's no way there were this many misses, though.
Nope.
Like, you do get into a development situation where, like, who is bringing these guys along? We've had questions about Ian LaPerriere for a long time. You're definitely not going to get an argument out of Kelly about that one, Will.
No argument out of me either on that front. The Flyers finally announced the trade officially
Of Laughton?
on their Twitter account of Laughton.
All right, because if we just did 2+ hours on a thing that didn't happen, I was
Wouldn't
going
that
to
be
jump out the
funny?
window.
It's funny. It took like
have a
all
hearty
day.
chuckle.
It was
Catholic
hours
no-no.
ago, but yeah, it's official now.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah. I just came across mine as well. All right. From Catholic Nano, will Rantanen signing a big deal with Dallas? With Rantanen signing a big deal with Dallas, does this open the door
No, he
for Flyers
resigned.
to throw an offer sheet at Wyatt Johnston? That was my feeling at 4 this morning when it looked like the thing was going to get done.
Yeah, so that's out.
But yes, he signed an extension today
It's
for
like 5x8 or something.
a very
like that.
reasonable
8
price.
or
Yeah, it's a
something.
bargain.
Yeah.
All right. Another one here from
Aviator.
Aviator says, how much does culture actually matter? Feels like the Flyers org deflects with that word.
Nah.
Only 6 and 11 actually reach their potential in this culture.
Okay, so the culture building started 2 years ago. So let's settle down on
Yeah,
it.
like Torts
Never
got
working.
here even
Yeah.
when Fletcher's last year and was like, the locker room is a
Is a
mess.
disaster. Okay.
Yeah,
And
I don't
it
think
needs
we're
to be
counting the big out
rebuilt
years
from
as
the
building
bottom.
that culture.
Second of all, like, look at the situation Chicago is in. Look at the Buffalo Sabres. Sometimes the culture being bad absolutely does matter. Like, you might be able to argue with how much it being good is going to affect the team being
That's
a
a great way
team,
to put it.
but it being bad absolutely affects the success of the team. And the fact of the matter is, the Flyers were a disaster from top to bottom, and they had to do something about it. It couldn't stay like it was. Like, are you suggesting that they should have just kept it like it was in the Fletcher era? Like, everyone hating everyone,
Like,
the alumni being mad, all the players hate coming to work. Like,
this is part of the reason I'm still furious that Gauthier won't tell us why he refused to come here.
because the answer
like,
is because I'm a whiny little baby.
Right. But
Yeah.
like when he first wanted to come over and sign, that was when the locker room was at its very worst.
Yes.
And I totally understand why the Flyers are like, we don't want him coming into this like
No.
just garbage fire. Like that, and those things do make a difference. That's a prime example.
Yes.
Again, you had a punk who didn't want to come here for whatever reason, but they didn't want him coming into that because it was so
It
bad.
was so messy. Yeah.
and the outside perception. Players I've never seen Severance, but from what I understand,
you got two experts right
you
here.
come home from work and you don't remember work.
Exactly.
That's not the way the NHL works.
No.
Players talk. And if it's like, we need, again, sign free agents, get guys to waive no trades, we need them to sign offer sheets willingly, they're not going to do it if they think the place sucks.
Philadelphia is not Miami. Okay.
Yeah.
You're not going to attract people here. We're not New York. You're not going to attract people here with just the city. We love the city. I'm a huge Philly
Winning-
guy, obviously. I live here. But like, you're not going to get people here on Philadelphia alone.
Getting talent is what matters most, but I can't say the culture stuff doesn't matter just because we can't quantify it.
No, it
That's all.
matters.
All right. From Adrian Franklin says, does Luchenko make the roster next season?
I think so.
I'd be willing to, he made it this year.
I was going to say he was so close to
I
sticking
think Torts
this
wanted
year.
to keep him,
Oh,
too.
Torts would have
Yeah.
kept him if it was up to him.
We just traded a guy, though, who got he got a 4-game tryout, Scott Laughton, and then isn't back. Like, maybe, I don't know.
Different situation.
Certainly. If he can't do what he's eventually going to become, or at least shades of it, like, I don't want him taking 7 years to find his offense like Sean Couturier, because we have him in this role. And he is so young. Like, he's going to be 19 at World Juniors next year. He'll actually have a role on the team. I just think it could go either way, and I'm not going to be bothered. Like, obviously, I want Luchenko here because that's fun.
It's a lot of things are gonna depend on
Yeah.
what he looks like in camp and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think
He will
though,
be in competition, absolutely.
For sure.
Do mentally prepare yourselves for him to not make it.
Yeah.
But I feel good about him making it
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, I think it's better than 50%, but I don't think that much better.
Right.
If you
It's
can
somewhere between,
almost
like,
stick when you're practically 17 years old, like, I feel like you're probably gonna.
And if they aren't able to pull off a swing for a center, we also get into the situation we were in when he made the team.
Right.
John Tortorella
Might
was
need
like,
a
well, we
center.
don't have any centers, so I'm going to try this guy and see if it works.
Yeah.
Like, that's what he basically said. So maybe we're in the exact same situation come September, October.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This one from JH. It's just a good Woo!
Woo!
I actually wanted to start the show with a woo
Agreed.
today, but we have like 2
got
presenting
this.
sponsors. It was so much. We have the
You had a lot
siren,
to
and
do.
I forgot. So thank you, JH. Woo! They did it. They traded
Shouldn't have
Laughton.
given Steve that thing.
That's a big woo. All right, from Via Negativa says, was Kuzmenko just never realistic to stay? He looked great with us. I know his past track record was just that, not a risk worth taking.
I just feel like if you can get something for him, you might as well, because like I feel like the likelihood is he's probably going to go back to Russia because no one's going to give him the money that he wants.
I like the idea of targeting players in his situation. And if he was 3 years younger, I would have loved to keep him.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's 29, I just don't see the upside. Like, say he lives up to expectations for the next 3 years, and then what?
Exactly.
I mean, like, I guess you trade him for more, but he's like 33 at that point. I don't know.
And also just how wildly his numbers just go back and forth. That scares the hell out of me to making any sort of commitment.
And who knows? Maybe they sign him in free agency.
Could do.
All right. From Kook. I love it. Without Laughton, which Flyer would get an A? That's actually something I wanted to ask Charlie, and we moved on. Sanheim, right?
Sanheim.
Gotta
That
be
was my
Sanheim,
first
yeah.
thought. Yeah. He's been here a while at this point.
Makes sense.
Just trying to think who else might even be in contention if it's not Sanheim, because we know he's not the.
Not if they're planning on trading him.
It was a joke.
Oh,
Coots and TK.
It's okay.
I mean, I could see it going to like maybe a Hathaway or a Paling.
Yeah.
It's going to be Sanheim, right?
Or
it's got to
bust,
be
right?
Sanheim.
Yeah, that would. I can't imagine it's
Or,
anyone.
wait. Dark horse contender. Owen Tippett.
Signed for
I
a
don't
while.
think so.
Owen Tippett's a big part of this team right now. I'm just putting it out there.
I just think
Sanheim makes much more sense. Like
Sanheim
if I'm
makes
doing the odds, like Sanheim's like a minus like 250 or something.
I don't know what those numbers mean, Steve.
That just means he's a big favorite.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That is.
good.
I was wondering that though, but
Minus
it's
better
kind of
than.
got to be Sanheim. I would assume.
Probably.
All right. From another here from our pal JH. He said, "Good trades today. Wonder how Twitter will spin it." All right. I wanted to say this when Charlie was here.
He was already having a meltdown.
We all need to log off.
Yeah, everybody log
I think
off.
Twitter is affecting our moods a little too much.
You are correct.
And like,
I don't go there anymore.
I don't know, man. Like, when 6 people are upset, you can't be like, "Oh, Twitter's on fire." Like, it doesn't really matter.
Log off.
Don't look at your replies.
Yeah.
That's my not just for me or Charlie or anyone here. Everyone.
It's a good way
It
to
don't
live your
matter.
life.
Post and ghost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Dump
exactly.
your thoughts out and don't read anything.
I agree
Yeah.
completely.
Let's see here from Yoshi. Danny makes trades like it's a video game. Oh, that's not enough. Here's a 4th. Oh, still not enough. How about a 6th? Sweet, good deal.
He put it in the app.
He is. That's. I said it last year with Walker. It happened this year with Laughton. Buy it. If you have your price and it's like, it's in that little yellow bar in the app, get it up to green.
Yeah.
Get your price because there's only so many picks you can make, first of all. And a 4th and a 6th, the chances of that guy even being a contributor,
Unlikely.
10%, probably lower.
Yeah.
All right. Blinson says, do we think Grebby will be... I'm going to get it by like the time he plays for us. I promise I'll have
You
it.
just got to hear Jim Jackson say it like a dozen times.
Grebenkin. Yes, Grebenkin. That's it.
Grebsy.
All right. Do you think Grebenkin will be here by the end of the season with the visa issues we saw with the other trade?
I don't even want to think about it.
I mean,
They got roster space.
Kuzmenko's got done faster than Peltier's.
You
who
know
the hell
why.
knows? Who the hell knows?
Oh, yeah.
Well, their AHL team is there too, so that wouldn't. I was like, well, if he's in the AHL, but no, the Marlies are right there. So I have no idea. That's a great question,
We'll
honestly,
find out.
Blinson. We'll find out. Maybe they figured out how to streamline the process. Maybe that was a learning experience for them.
Sure.
I don't know.
Let's go with that.
JH
Matters of
preach
state,
Kelly. Having a culture of losing like Chicago and Buffalo is weak loser stuff. Yeah, I mean,
It doesn't work.
it can.
Like, don't believe me. There was an article on The Athletic like a week and a half ago about how there's literally zero evidence that tear down, full tank, loser mode rebuilds work in the NHL. So
There are a ton of teams that win cups, like all of them, with high-end picks, first overalls. But
they didn't necessarily engage in a full tear down tank like Chicago
Think
did.
about the Oilers. The Oilers had first round picks for years.
They had like 5 of them in a
#1
row.
picks. And it took them until McDavid.
Honestly, selfishly, I'm just not interested in covering like another 8 years of this.
No.
And that's the only way to like.
No,
Yeah, that's the
thank
other
you.
thing. It
It's
would
the
take
only way.
forever.
Like you can't
I'm
guarantee.
retiring.
If it worked, it would take
Yeah.
forever.
It's a lottery, and you just don't know what those guys are going to do that year.
If
Like
Michkov-
2017 was a weak draft,
Yeah.
and look what happened.
I'll announce it now. If Michkov ain't it, I'm retiring from this. I'm done.
That might be it for us. I mean, I
that
can't
it?
imagine we'll have an audience left. Was that it? That's the end of the super chats. All right, and
Thanks,
that
guys.
means this has been PHLY Flyers, our trade deadline special, brought to you by Rite Aid, your neighborhood pharmacy. Stop by and stock up for allergy season. Visit riteaid.com for a store near you. And of course, our daily presenting sponsor, Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. All right, that's it for us. We will be back, guess what? Tomorrow and Sunday, back-to-back pre- and post-game afternoon games. Make sure you tune in for those right here on the PHLY Flyers YouTube page. Let's do one of those like spikes. Charlie's always good at remembering to tell people to like it. Smash that like button. Do all that stuff.
Smash
But
it.
Follow us here on the YouTube page. Hit that reminder bell so you never miss a live show. Follow the Twitter at PHLY_Flyers. And follow the podcast as well, wherever you get those. Just search PHLY Flyers. I am Bill Matz. That is Kelly Hinkle. That is Steve Jaco. Charlie O'Connor was here. Till next time, way to go, Danny.
We all silly like the mayor.